In the 25th year of Yonghua of the Great Shang Dynasty, late autumn, half a year had passed since the late emperor's death, and the new emperor had only just turned 6. The capital had been drenched in rain for days on end. The people were uneasy, and rumors ran wild through the streets. At such a time, the demon star of the capital, who had been unconscious for 10 years, suddenly brought chaos to the princess's residence. A maid, so frightened that her hands and feet trembled, dropped a flower pot to the ground. She kept shouting, "Princess Chengping has awakened." Speaking of Princess Chengping, she was the eldest legitimate princess born to the late empress. She had once been deeply favored by the late emperor, yet it was said that before even reaching marriageable age, she rode horses into people, forced opera performers to death, abducted men, and kept male favorites, wicked to the very core. Her infamy as a great she-devil had spread far and wide. In the residence of Ing Dongjun, after Princess Chengping had been properly dressed and attended to, she slowly slipped a jade bracelet on her wrist and asked, "Little Ji Xiang, tell me, do you think heaven has gone blind?" Ji Xiang was her close attendant. Kneeling on the ground, he listened to her and smiled gently. Chengping turned around, saw him kneeling there so obediently, and lowered her voice. "I forgot again, you're mute." Then she casually handed him a stuffed toy, which Ji Xiang hurriedly accepted. Seeing him like that, Chengping said with some amusement, "Even if you're mute, you're at least an interesting mute. Sparing your life back then wasn't a waste." Just then, a strange-looking maid entered carrying a tray and respectfully reported, "Princess, it's time for your medicine." As soon as the maid lifted the lid of the bowl, a thick medicinal smell rose into the air. Chengping frowned at the smell and raised a hand to cover her nose. "I don't want to drink it. Leave." The maid beside her kept up a fake smile and patiently explained, "This afternoon, Princess still has to enter the palace to pay respects to Her Majesty the Empress. You'll only have energy if you take your medicine." Before she could finish speaking, Ji Xiang suddenly grabbed the steaming bowl of medicine and dumped it straight over the maid's head. Caught off guard, the maid could only clutch her scalded head and scream. Before she could recover herself, Ji Xiang had already dragged her out the door, his face icy and utterly expressionless. Meanwhile, Chengping rested her chin in one hand and said in a careless tone, "I haven't been here these past years. Little noble consort standards have really fallen. She doesn't even know to send someone sharper as her eyes and ears, and dares be so perfunctory with me." Chengping looked toward the door, where Ji Xiang now stood guard, and said, "Tell me, do you think the vast realm of our great Shang dynasty is about to fall into the hands of that useless Xiao Ying and her son?" Hearing this, Ji Xiang hurriedly gestured with his hands, as if to say that she had nothing now and was no longer worth Empress Dowager Zhao's fear. And besides, that woman was no longer noble consort Xiao, but the Empress Dowager now. Seeing that, Chengping waved a hand in annoyance and said, "How many times have I told you? Don't flail around at me like that. I can't understand it." At that moment, Ji Xiang took a black pill from inside his robe and carefully held it out before Chengping, smiling brightly as if to say, "Princess, take your medicine." She took the pill from his hand and put it into her mouth with complete trust, then immediately drank water to swallow it down. After finishing it, Chengping ordered, "Go prepare the carriage. I want to return to the palace." Then Ji Xiang carefully pushed Chengping in her wheelchair inside. Beside her, the maids fanned her and bowed in deep respect. Chengping frowned as she looked down and said, "Why are there so many steps here?" At that moment, one of the guards saw her enter and trembled inwardly, praying non-stop, "Heaven protect me. Please let me survive this demon star's hands. Best if I survive whole and uninjured." Chengping motioned to stop in front of the man and asked, "Are you the commander of the princess's residence, Zhou Yan?" Hearing that, the man hurriedly knelt and saluted respectfully. This humble official is, "Greetings, princess." But inwardly, a question surfaced in his mind. After waking up, the princess could no longer walk. Chengping sat in the wheelchair, cast him a bored glance, and said, "Who picked this person for me? He looks far too ordinary. Replace him with a handsome one." Seeing her disdain him so openly, the guard became frantic with fear and repeatedly knocked his head on the ground, crying loudly, "This official obeys. This official's appearance is lowly and unworthy of serving the princess. I'll go to the Ministry of Personnel at once and report the princess's request. Changping rubbed her temple and continued instructing, go replace him with that fool or whatever his name was. Ive forgotten, that top scholar surnamed you. Have him come serve me. Hearing that, the guard hesitated in confusion and asked, the top scholar you that princess speaks of, is it the top scholar from the 25th year of Yongha? The question made the surroundings fall into an unnatural silence. Ignoring everyone's reaction, Changping clapped her hands as if remembering and declared loudly, that's right, you Shunshin. Yulong, so dazzlingly handsome, one of a kind. The guard stared at her in disbelief, stunned by how certain she sounded. After a while, he trembled as he replied, Princess, I'm afraid, Lord, you cannot come to the princess's residence to serve anymore. Changping's eyes darkened at once, and she asked, why not? It's not as if he's never come here before. Could it be that after I fell unconscious, he married and had children? Sweat poured down the guard's forehead as he stammered. No, not that. It's just that Lord Yu is now the Central Secretariat Minister, one of the Regent Ministers. The late Emperor also appointed him Junior Marshal to the Crown Prince. At that, Changping looked somewhat puzzled. Central Secretariat Minister? That low-born Yulang, who used to be my #1 male favorite. A memory from 10 years earlier surfaced. At that time, Shunshin was still a young man, saying in extreme irritation, Princess, what are you doing? My mother said it clearly. I must absolutely not give myself to the princess. Please conduct yourself with dignity. Let me go. Suddenly, Changping lunged forward, lightly pinched Shunshin's chin, and drawled, conduct myself with dignity? Yulang really is adorable. I like this look of yours, all proper and tense. It's truly very seductive. Changping let her fingers brush over Shunshin's body and went on with a smile. Spring nights are short, and there's no need to keep following those boring rules. Better to enjoy pleasure with me. As soon as she finished, she unhesitatingly yanked loose the tie of Shunshin's robe. Back in the present, Changping sat in her wheelchair, her expression somewhat dark as she swept her gaze over the guards. Under her stare, the guards looked at one another fearfully, not daring to make a sound. Changping turned to Jixiang, pouting a little childishly as she asked, something this important, why didn't you report it to me as soon as I woke up? Hearing that, Jixiang began gesturing again, trying to explain that she had been unconscious for 10 years. The people she had once taken a liking to were either beautiful or talented. If someone like that had gone 10 years without promotion and still hadn't married or had children, then he could hardly still count among the living. After hearing this, Changping sighed helplessly and waved a hand in resignation. Fine, keep doing this job for now. Once I find someone suitable, I'll replace you then. The guard beside her immediately nodded. Yes. Jixiang then carefully lifted her into the carriage. Resting in his arms, Changping still muttered non-stop. My imperial father had terrible taste in women, but when it came to choosing men, he was spot on. Changping departed, with the guards coming out behind her to see her off. Once the carriage had gone far enough, the guards immediately huddled together and began whispering among themselves. So the rumors between the princess and Lord Yu were true? You really can't judge a book by its cover. Lord Yu is such a high-ranking official, and so cold and aloof in temperament. Yet he actually used to be something the princess kept all to herself. I even heard that Lord Yu was injured by the princess back then, and that's why he still hasn't married. No way. I clearly heard that Lord Yu still hasn't taken a wife, not because of the princess, but because, hearing the maids gossiping in low voices like this, the guard whom Changping had just called too plain turned and barked, "Shut your mouths. Are you all tired of living? You even dare discuss other people's private affairs? By the laws of Great Shang, those who slander their superiors are to be thrown into prison for a year and given 60 lashes. Since this is your first offense today, I'll spare you once. All of you, go to the front courtyard and receive 5 strokes. 1 quarter's wages will also be docked." As soon as he said this, the soldiers dragged away the maids who had been gossiping for punishment. As for the guard, he could only look after them in despair and think, when will these days ever end? Meanwhile, on the bustling street, a commoner suddenly cried out in alarm, "Princess Changping is here." As Changping's carriage approached, the street that had just been full of lively chatter was now completely empty, without a soul in sight. Looking out from inside the carriage, Changping said with some disappointment, 10 years, and the capital is still the same. How boring. This carriage is already moving very slowly, and there's still this fright. At that thought, she recalled that 10 years ago, her carriage had run someone over and killed them. With the late emperor protecting her, she had emerged unharmed, but the eunuch driving the carriage had been brutally executed. Thinking of this made her a little angry, and she stopped dwelling on it. The driver called out, "Princess, we've arrived." The attendants quickly brought out the wheelchair. Chumping slowly got down. Just then, a group of people walked over, and the woman leading them spoke in a haughty tone. "Jian, look, doesn't this happen to be Princess Qingping? So the princess has awakened? Princess, after waking up, your legs are crippled now, are they?" This woman was Xiao Hui, a younger female cousin of Empress Dowager Xiao. Seeing the unfamiliar group before her, Qingping turned to Ji Xiang and asked loudly, "Who are they? Do I know them?" Flushing red with irritation, Xiao Hui snapped, "I am Xiao Hui of the Xiao family, younger sister of the current Empress Dowager Xiao. And you dare say you don't remember me? Standing beside me is your imperial younger sister, Princess Jian." Qingping smiled faintly and replied in a sarcastic tone, "So you're Xiao Fourth. I truly didn't recognize you. 10 years apart, and you look more and more like Minister Xiao. Just as round." Then she looked at Jian and said, "Imperial younger sister, you've changed a lot too. I didn't recognize you at first. Back then, you were always standing behind me. I rarely ever saw your face from the front." Stung by the mockery, Xiao Hui changed the subject and cleared her throat before saying, "The princess wishes to enter the palace now? Today, Her Majesty the Empress Dowager is discussing state affairs with several regent ministers in the main hall, so I'm afraid she has no time to receive the princess. Things aren't like before anymore. In the past, whatever the princess wanted, she got. But now, the princess should just wait here." The guard around them were somewhat alarmed by the scene before them and wanted no part in it. Xiao Hui stepped closer to Qingping, her tone dripping with mockery. "As it happens, the heavy rains a few days ago damaged the roof of Qingyan Hall, and it still hasn't been repaired. So Princess will just have to wait outside the palace gate." At that moment, Qingping sat alone in her wheelchair, while the surrounding guards seemed to have no intention of speaking up and only stood there watching the spectacle. Qingping lowered her voice, her sharp gaze full of threat as she said, "If the Empress Dowager is putting state affairs first and has no time to receive idle people, then shouldn't you all also wait at this palace gate for 2 hours? Xiao Hui raised her chin and replied irritably, "That's right. Of course we also have to wait here." Hearing her declare that so forcefully, the corners of Qingping's lips lifted in satisfaction. "Then I'll trouble you all to do just that. I'll be entering the palace first." Xiao Hui froze, her mouth twisting as she demanded, "What are you talking about?" Right then, the heavy palace gates slowly opened, and a voice rang out respectfully from within. "Welcome, Your Highness, eldest princess." Both Xiao Hui and Jian were visibly startled when they saw who came out, their eyes widening in shock. It was Mama Hua, the chief matron of the Office of Punishments. She quickly approached Qingping and, without hesitation, knelt respectfully. "Your Highness, the Grand Empress Dowager invites you." Seeing her kneel like that before her, Qingping could not help but feel a pang in her heart. She immediately reached out to help her up and said with a smile, "It's been many years, Mama Hua, and you still seem in such good spirits. I entered the palace today to see grandmother. I wonder if she's been well." Mama Hua nodded carefully. "Your Highness need not worry. Her Majesty is well." Then the guards carefully lifted Qingping's wheelchair to carry her inside. But suddenly Qingping's voice rang out, cold as ice. "Wait, Mama Hua." As she spoke, she decisively pointed at Xiao Hui and Jian, then ordered the attendant beside her, "Keep watch here. Make sure they stand here for a full 2 hours." Hearing that, Xiao Hui trembled with fury and shouted, "You! What right do you have to make us stand here and wait?" Qingping was already being carried inside by the guards. She turned back leisurely and said in a mocking tone, "If you don't stand there long enough, I'll submit a memorial accusing the current Empress Dowager of colluding with her maternal family to humiliate the eldest princess, who is in mourning for the late emperor, right before the palace gates and in full public view. I sincerely wish to know whether the Xiao family no longer holds the late emperor or my Ying clan in its eyes." Xiao Hui was left speechless, furious to the extreme. Her face flushed dark red as she thought bitterly. Today, Changping deliberately wore mourning clothes. But that makes sense. When the late emperor passed away, she still hadn't awakened. Filial piety comes first, so her wearing mourning is only natural. That bitch. Ignoring the resentful people behind her, Changping softly said, "All right, Mama Hua, let's go." After walking for a while, Mama Hua looked around carefully, then said worriedly, "Princess," having only just returned to the palace, immediately confronting Empress Dowager Xiao was truly not a wise move. Changping remained indifferent and replied in a low voice, "Mama knows my temper. Whoever makes me unhappy, I'll make them even more unhappy. It's a pity second imperial brother is gone. If he had inherited imperial father's realm, would I have to watch that woman Xiao Yan's expression? Why is it that good people never live long?" Mama Hua found Changping's tone a little too casual and unguarded, so she quickly reminded her, "Princess, be careful with your words." After the second prince died, noble consort also fell ill and passed away. And now even the late emperor. The Grand Empress Dowager had to send off the younger generation again and again. Her health was no longer what it once was. She earnestly reminded her once more. Later, in front of Her Majesty, Princess must watch her words and not make Her Majesty sad. Hearing this, Changping obediently gave a soft to reassure her. Meanwhile, at the Yu residence, home of Central Secretariat Minister Yu Shunshin, Madame Rong saw her son adjusting his clothes and asked in confusion, "Where are you going? Isn't today your day off?" Shunshin remained calm as he replied, "Mother, something has come up in the palace. I need to go there." Hearing this, Madame Rong frowned and reminded him, "What important matter requires you to go today of all days? Didn't I tell you that members of the Yu clan are coming today?" But Shunshin was unmoved, still firm in his original intention. "Your son knows. I'll try to come back early today, but I must go now. It's extremely important." With that, he strode away decisively, his handsome face still devoid of any emotion. At Shoshin Palace, Changping looked at the desolate scene before her, unable to suppress her confusion, and asked, "Why is it so bleak?" I remember grandmother liking lively places. While carefully pushing her wheelchair, Mama Hua explained gently, "In recent years, Her Majesty has suffered from headaches and can't bear noise. Anyone who could be dismissed has been dismissed. Only a few servants remain for daily care." Just then, an elderly woman with a full head of white hair emerged from inside, supported by attendants. Her voice trembled with affection as she called, "Changping, is that you?" This was the Grand Empress Dowager, Ing Dongjuan's grandmother. The moment she saw her beloved granddaughter safe before her, she could no longer hold back her emotions. She immediately rushed forward and embraced her, calling out with deep emotion, "My Changping." Changping's eyes also filled with tears when she saw the person closest to her, and she said in a choked but joyful voice, "Grandmother, I missed you so much." Seeing her like this, the old woman lifted a hand to wipe her tears and said softly, "Grandmother missed Changping very much too. I wanted to go see you, but your imperial father wouldn't allow anyone to visit. Grandmother even quarreled with him several times over it." At the mention of the past, Changping grew a little annoyed and puffed her cheeks in grievance. Wasn't it all because imperial father listened to that nonsense from Master Yu Yang? That Taoist said your granddaughter had suffered a severe head injury and that medicine could not save me. He said I had to be placed in the 5 elements, 8 trigrams formation in the underground palace, and every month he would come perform acupuncture and Taoist rites. During that time, no one was allowed to disturb me. Having lain trapped in the underground palace for 10 years, the more she recounted it, the more anger blazed in her eyes. She declared, "As I see it, he only held a grudge because I teased him before and wanted revenge. Otherwise, why did I wake up the moment he left? Once I catch him, I will strip him naked and tie him up." His temperament was still as headstrong as ever. The Grand Empress Dowager was suddenly overcome with nostalgia and softly called out, "Changping." The atmosphere was abruptly broken when a voice sounded from outside. "Your Majesty, the Commandery Prince has come to pay his respects." A handsome young boy and a woman entered right after that. This was Ing Shun, the only son of Chengping's second imperial uncle. At once, Ingshun obediently knelt and said respectfully, "This grandson greets great-grandmother." The Grand Empress Dowager took Ingshun by the hand and gently brought him before Chengping as she introduced him. "Chengping, this is your second imperial uncle's son. His name is Ingshun. He's a child with a bitter fate. This is the first time you two have met. Since the day he was born, he has never seen his father, and his legal mother has never cared for him either. If the two of you can rely on each other, only then can I rest easy." At this point, the Grand Empress Dowager's voice grew heavy with emotion as she remembered the past. "Back then, you were wounded by assassins while saving your second imperial uncle, and you remained unconscious for 10 full years. Sadly, your second imperial uncle had no backbone. After the assassins cut off his arm, he gave up on himself completely. In the end, after overdosing on Changdong powder, he jumped into the Lotus Pond and left behind only this child." Seeing that she was about to cry from the painful memory, Chengping hurriedly comforted her. "Grandmother, what's past is past. Don't think about it anymore." Seeing this, the Grand Empress Dowager wiped away her tears and said cheerfully, "Very well, I won't mention it again. Right now, all I want is to see Shun'er grow up safely and to find you a good husband. Then even if I die, I can die in peace." Hearing this, Chengping asked with some confusion, "A husband? 10 years ago, Father Emperor had already chosen one for me, hadn't he? Even if he wasn't as handsome as Wu Lang, he was still easy enough on the eyes, and his family background was barely worthy of me." When the Grand Empress Dowager heard that name, she faltered for a moment, then sighed. "The one you're referring to is Gu Fengqi, Marquis Jing'an. Gu Fengqi is handsome and outstandingly capable. He is now the great general of the Flying Cavalry Guard, 3rd rank. He truly was a suitable match. Unfortunately, a few years ago, he married Xiao Hui. Their eldest daughter is already 3 years old now." Her words struck Chengping like a spear straight through the body. She widened her eyes and demanded loudly, "Gu Fengqi had a betrothal with me. How could he marry someone else?" The more she spoke, the angrier she became, and she shouted, "Men go around preaching rules and virtue for women all day long. Doesn't anyone teach them what men's virtue is supposed to be? Shameless. And of all people, he married Xiao Hui. What awful taste." The Grand Empress Dowager was also somewhat troubled by the matter. Rubbing her temple lightly, she said, "The engagement between you and Gu Fengqi back then was only spoken of informally. Your father had not yet issued an edict before you fell unconscious. After you went into a coma, the Gu family waited 5 years before asking your father for permission for him to marry someone else." Hearing this, Chengping could only reluctantly accept it and replied with a pout, "Fine. A man like that is no great loss anyway. But if grandmother wants to choose a new husband for me, he absolutely cannot be inferior." At that, she began counting on her fingers. "First, he cannot be uglier than Gu Fengqi. Otherwise, wouldn't your granddaughter be mocked by the whole world? Second, his official rank cannot be lower than 3rd rank. Third, his family must hold at least a marquis title or above." Seeing her ramble on with such lofty demands, the Grand Empress Dowager interrupted in exasperation. "Chengping, you are already 25 years old. For ordinary girls, by your age, they can only wait to be chosen. Fortunately, your status is high, so you can still choose for yourself. But you cannot make your standards too high." Hearing this, Chengping felt somewhat sorrowful about her own fate and replied dejectedly, "Just because I'm 25, I'm not allowed to have standards for my own marriage? I have to settle for worthless men?" Back then, even that Assistant Minister Chu from the Ministry of Revenue, at 65 years old, still managed to take a beautiful 15-year-old girl as his concubine. The Grand Empress Dowager pitied her deeply and sighed. "He is a man. You are a woman. This world is simply like that." Unable to bear the unfairness any longer, Chengping burst out angrily, "What kind of rotten world is that? If someone wants to be my imperial consort, not just any stray cat or dog will do. If not, then I would rather choose no husband at all and simply pick a few pretty young men to attend me at my side." At this moment, Chengping's gaze had turned sharp, and she declared coldly, "I, Princess Chengping, will never obediently listen to the world's nonsense and muddle through my whole life. If men can do it, then I can do it too." The Grand Empress Dowager felt somewhat helpless hearing such outrageous demands, but because she doted on her granddaughter, she could only nod and agree. All right, I'll keep an eye out according to what you said first. I have a bit of headache. Go back for today. Seizing the chance, Chengping instantly changed her attitude and happily leaned close to the Grand Empress Dowager. Smiling sweetly, she asked, "Grandmother, your granddaughter has been a little short on money lately. Could I possibly get a bit of allowance?" Hearing this, the Grand Empress Dowager pretended to be annoyed and scolded her affectionately. "You've only been awake a few days. How could you already be short of money?" Chengping immediately put on a pitiful expression, her eyes brimming with tears as she said miserably, "Your granddaughter was never well off to begin with, and now that woman Xiao Ying is in charge, she cuts corners on everything I eat, wear, and use. Just look at how poor my princess residence has become. It's an insult to the imperial family." The Grand Empress Dowager explained softly, "It's not that she's cutting back on your expenses. The palace is trying to economize now as well. Aside from my Shoshin palace, which she did not touch, the supplies to every other palace have been cut in half. Even her own Jiaohua palace is the same." As she spoke, she signaled to the maid beside her, "Go fetch it." "Yes." The Grand Empress Dowager continued. That action won her praise throughout the court and earned her no small amount of goodwill. Chengping beamed as she received the brocade box handed over by the Grand Empress Dowager. She immediately thanked her delightedly. "Many thanks, grandmother. I knew grandmother treats me best." But when she opened it and looked inside, her tone instantly fell, and she said in bitter disappointment, "Why is there only 10,000 taels? Didn't grandmother just say that Xiao Ying hadn't cut your expenses?" The Grand Empress Dowager replied sternly, "For now, this is all there is. If you don't want it, put it down at once." Chengping hugged the box tightly to herself and said radiantly, "Thank you, grandmother. Then your granddaughter will take her leave now and come visit grandmother again another day." With that, she signaled for her attendants to push her carriage away. From behind, the Grand Empress Dowager suddenly called after her, "Chengping." She had someone hand over a food box as well, and did not forget to remind her, "I specially had this made for you. I remember that when you were little, you liked these silver thread cakes best." The tiny little girl once used to sit on the steps of Fengxi Palace, hugging a box far too big for her. If no one watched her, she could finish half of it in one go. The Grand Empress Dowager placed the food box in her hands and instructed her lovingly, "If you want to eat them again next time, just come to the palace and find grandmother." Chengping, don't be afraid. Even though your father is gone, you still have grandmother for everything. Hearing this, Chengping's eyes immediately grew moist with emotion. She answered obediently, "Yes, Chengping will remember." By now, Chengping had already been pushed out into the courtyard by her attendants. Sensing that the two people behind her kept following all the way, she finally turned and asked, "You've been following me for quite a while. Is there something you want?" The woman in pale purple then stepped forward and introduced herself. "This concubine is Commandery Prince Shun's birth mother. My name is Han Shuang. I was originally a singing girl in the residence of the second prince. I know that back then your highness was deeply attached to the second prince and was the person he trusted most." Han Shuang bowed respectfully and continued, "This concubine often tells the commandery prince that in this deep palace, he must never easily trust anyone's words. Aside from the Grand Empress Dowager, only the princess can be trusted." After hearing that, Chengping nodded slightly in approval. "No wonder after you gave birth to Ying Shun, grandmother did not keep the child and cast aside the mother. It's because you're a clever woman. It would be a pity to kill you. Don't worry, Ying Shun is my nephew, and I will take good care of him." Then Xingping pointed at Ying Shun and asked, "You're 10 years old now, aren't you? What do you usually do for amusement?" When Ying Shun heard her question, he honestly listed them off. "Read books. What else? Write essays." Hearing that, Chengping looked rather dispirited. Propping up her chin with one hand, she said, "If all you do all day is read, doesn't that make you a terribly dull little bookworm? That won't do. In another 2 years, when you're a little older, I'll take you to Shuiyue Tower to broaden your horizons. It's a wonderful place." Ying Shun innocently asked in confusion, "What kind of place is Shuiyue Tower?" Han Shuang did not let the increasingly improper conversation continue and hurriedly changed the subject. "Princess, the commandery prince caught a chill last night, and when he woke this morning his stomach had been aching dully. This concubine will have a palace servant take him back first. Once Xing Shun had gone out of sight, Han Shuang stepped closer and said respectfully, "Princess, the truth is that I came to see you today because there is something I wish to tell you. Earlier in the Grand Empress Dowager's palace, I heard your highness mention Lord Yu. What I want to say is related to Lord Yu." At this point, Han Shuang's tone grew low and mysterious. Holding a flower branch she had picked by the roadside, Chengping said softly, "If it concerns my Yulang, then I want to hear it all the more." Han Shuang continued her report. "This concubine has discovered that Lord Yu and Empress Dowager Xiao are having an affair." At those words, Chengping crushed the flower branch in her hand. Her face darkened at once, clouded with gloom and confusion. Seeing the rapid changes in Chengping's expression, Han Shuang could not suppress her fear and unconsciously stepped back. Seeing that, Chengping's face hardened. Her eyes turned icy as she ordered, "Why are you retreating? Am I that frightening? Come closer and keep talking." Han Shuang swallowed and steadied herself, then continued tremblingly. "It happened one night over a month ago. Commander Prince Shun had overeaten and was so bloated that he couldn't sleep. I was worried, so I personally went to the Imperial Medical Institute to fetch some digestive medicine for him. Because I was in a hurry to get back and check on my son, I boldly took a shortcut. To my surprise, as I walked on, I accidentally saw Empress Dowager Xiao and Lord Yu standing in the shadows, speaking intimately. Lord Yu is normally very cautious, so he was extremely alert. I was curious and quietly moved a little closer, but unfortunately, he heard something unusual and was about to come over to investigate. Just then, a white cat suddenly leaped out of the bushes. Thanks to that, this concubine narrowly escaped disaster. But the frightening part was that the very next day, I heard that a palace maid named Yin Hong from the imperial kitchen had suddenly died without warning. That Yin Hong happened to keep a white cat exactly like the one from the night before. I secretly had someone investigate, and to my horror, I learned this. Yin Hong had been brutally strangled to death and her body was thrown into the river. Hearing this, Chengping snapped the branch in her hand in two. Her gaze sharpened as she challenged her. "This is only your side of the story. Do you have any concrete evidence that can prove the two of them are having an affair?" Han Shuang hurriedly shook her head. "This concubine has no evidence, but there have long been rumors in the palace. They say that before the Empress Dowager entered the palace, she had secretly pledged herself to Lord Yu. Unfortunately, even though Lord Yu took top honors as the Zhuang Yuan, the Xiao family still despised his humble origins and resolutely refused to allow the marriage. Because of this, Lord Yu bore a deep grudge against the Xiao family and has repeatedly clashed with their faction in court." After hearing the story, Chengping curled her lips into a cold smile and lowered her voice to speculate. "But recently, the relationship between Lord Yu and the Xiao family has suddenly eased. I'm afraid Empress Dowager Xiao stepped in to mediate. You really think too highly of Xiaoing." Then she scoffed, as if she were worthy. Seeing this, Han Shuang eagerly chimed in, her face brightening as she flattered, "Naturally, a talented and wise man like Lord Yu. How could he possibly change convictions he has held for years just because of a woman?" To her surprise, Qingping immediately countered in high spirits. "Why couldn't he? Just because Xiao Ying can't do it doesn't mean I can't." Han Shuang, standing beside her, felt somewhat helpless at the princess's strange train of thought. Is that so? It seemed that Chengping had already grasped the key point. With a light wave of her hand, she said, "All right, I understand. You may go." Han Shuang respectfully bowed, answered yes, and quickly withdrew. Once Han Shuang's figure had disappeared completely, Qingping turned and asked Jixiang, "How much of what she just said do you think is believable?" Jixiang thought for a moment and then explained with hand signs, "There is no basis and no evidence. 3 parts out of 10 believable. First, Yin Hong from the Imperial Kitchen really did keep a white cat, and she is dead. Second, there really have been rumors in the palace about Empress Dowager Xiao and Lord Yu. Third, Commandery Prince Shen really does often get bloated from overreading. Qingping pondered for a long while before giving her own opinion. I think what she said may be 5 parts believable. Fourth, that woman Xiao Ying did secretly meet my Yulang in the Imperial Garden in the middle of the night. Fifth, the two of them must have known each other before, because I once saw one of Xiao Ying's intimate belongings in my Yulang's hands. At this point, her eyes turned distant and sorrowful as old memories suddenly flooded back. She began recalling the past. On a still and silent night long ago, Yu Shunshan was sleeping soundly in bed when suddenly a mischievous hand reached over to touch him. He swiftly seized the intruder's wrist, opened his eyes to look at the person before him, and asked with helpless embarrassment, "Princess, do you know what hour it is now?" Caught red-handed, Chengping put on a pitiful, coquettish face and said, "But I can't sleep. Beloved Yulang, come play with me." Hearing that, Yu Shunshan sighed and said, "If your highness cannot sleep, I do have a method you could try." Chengping's eyes lit up with eager anticipation. But Yu Shunshan then mercilessly poured cold water over her hopes and said, "I'll recite poetry to your highness. It will lull your highness to sleep." Those dull words dragged Chengping out of her earlier romantic fantasies. She laughed lightly and said in disappointment, "Yulang really has no sense of romance." Just then, something strange fell out from the book in Yu Shunshan's hand. Quick-eyed and quick-handed, Chengping picked it up to examine it, asking with delighted curiosity, "Yulang, which beauty gave you this love token?" In her memory, Yu Shunshan still wore a calm expression as he gently explained, "This poetry collection was written by my good friend Jiang Yanqing. He must have accidentally left it inside." Hearing that, Chengping suddenly pressed close to him, her bright eyes sparkling as she happily said, "If Yulang says so, then I'll believe you." Returning to the present, Jixiang listened to her recount that old incident with such infatuation written all over her face, and curled his lip in disdain. He gestured, "And you believed him? Are you really that easy to fool?" Chengping still held the crushed flower branch in her hand. Lost in thought, she said dreamily and nostalgically, "You wouldn't understand." His eyes back then were so sincere and innocent, and the way he recited poetry was so beautifully cadenced. How could I not believe him? Standing behind her, Jixiang showed no mercy and continued signing, "Lord Yu is truly no good." Seeing that, Chengping gently defended him. "You can't say that either. He must have lied back then because he cared about me. He was probably afraid I'd get jealous, so he only lied to coax me." Suddenly, Yu Shunshan's figure appeared right before Chengping's eyes. Looking at the poised and elegant man in front of her, she thought in surprise, "It's him? Yu Shunshan, the only man truly worthy of being called uniquely peerless and exquisitely handsome." There were also several people following behind Yu Shunshan at this moment. Yu Shunshan and Chengping looked straight into each other's eyes. In that instant, beautiful fragments of the past surfaced once more in her mind. Unable to hold back, Chengping spoke first. "Yulang, it's been many years. Have you been well?" The people following behind her were all startled when they heard such an intimate form of address. Good heavens! Yulang. Yu Shunshan slowly bent down and picked up the flower branch that Chengping had accidentally dropped. He placed it back in her hand and said politely, "Thank you for your highness's concern. This minister is very well." Then he turned and left without hesitation, never once looking back. The people behind him watched and silently felt indignant on their master's behalf. This was the very princess who had once monopolized Junyao, and now she was calling him Yulang. Fortunately, Junyao had a temperament as calm as drifting clouds and startled winds, and could not be bothered to bicker over it. Having witnessed the scene, Jixiang stepped before Chengping and waved his hands in questioning signs. Was my lord's reaction just now concern for the princess? Chengping pointed furiously at Yu Shunshan's retreating back and said, "Who does he think he is? Why is he acting as if I were the one who betrayed him? Am I someone just anyone can look at with that kind of expression?" Jixiang then smiled in a rather meaningful way and gestured in explanation, as if saying, "Is the owner of that poetry collection, the friend of Lord Yu named Jiang Yanqing. Your Highness and Jiang Yanqing were strangers to one another, So of course Jiang Yinqing's impression of you came entirely from his good friend. Princess, why don't you guess what exactly Lord you said about you in front of him to make Jiang Yinqing treat you that way? Qimping gave a light snort. With a slightly sulky tone, she avoided the point and said, "You know nothing. That medicine your wretched servant gave me must have had something wrong with it. My head is starting to hurt again. I ought to exterminate your 9 clans." Ji Xiang was used to her temper by now, and simply gestured along perfunctorily. "Yes, whatever you say is right." At that moment, the man walking behind Yu Shunshin, Jiang Yinqing, spoke up. So Princess Changping really is woken up. Inwardly, he thought, back then, Junyao was forcibly taken back to the princess's residence and detained there for months. It was not easy for him to finally escape. As he thought this, Jiang Yinqing recalled Yu Shunshin's miserable appearance in those days. At the time, he had not only looked utterly shaken out of his senses, but his whole body had also been covered in suggestive marks. It had truly been too tragic to describe. From then on, he became even more wary of women. The old madam keeps urging him all day long to marry. He would rather bear the charge of being unfilial than compromise. The more Jiang Yinqing thought about it, the more he could not bear the injustice done to his friend. So he spoke up to advise him. "Junyao, you are now a regent minister, no longer that penniless poor scholar who let her bully you back then. Princess Changping has already lost her power. In the past, she could do whatever she wanted to you, but now it should be you who can do whatever you want to her." Yu Shunshin turned his head. His face remained cold, but his eyes were deep and unreadable as he said, "Do whatever I want to her." Like what? That expression and that question left Jiang Yinqing stunned. He thought, Junyao, what kind of reaction is that? This is bad. How did I forget to tell Junyao something this important? Inside the quiet carriage, Changping sat in silence, absently turning a crushed flower branch in her hand. Seeing this, Ji Xiang, who sat beside her, raised his hand to gesture. "Today the Shao family deliberately made things difficult for your highness at the palace gate. Do you need me to find a chance to teach Shao Hui a lesson? Gouge out her eyes, cut off her ears, or chop off both her hands?" Seeing her loyal guard speaking such nonsense again, she lifted her hand and lightly knocked him on the head. Then she turned and leaned her head against the window, looking outside as she analyzed in a thoughtful tone. After the new emperor ascended the throne, more than half of the imperial guards were replaced. Almost everyone in the palace now supports the new emperor. Do you really think Shao Hui was stupid enough to provoke me today for no reason? No matter what, I am still the current eldest princess. Without an order from Empress Dowager Shao, her elder sister, even if you gave her 100 times the courage, she would never dare act so brazenly. Ji Xiang gestured again in confusion. Then what was the Empress Dowager's purpose? Resting her chin on one hand, Changping turned back and smiled brightly, full of implication, as she asked, "Take a guess." At Zhaohua Palace, Shao Hui was pacing back and forth with an aggrieved expression. "Your Majesty said Changping would endure my taunts. She really could endure them, but then she spread word that she was going to teach the Shao family and your Majesty a lesson. If uncle and father hadn't instructed us beforehand to act modestly, I would have, before she could finish, a powerful woman slammed her teacup onto the table and coldly cut her off. You picked up your life today. Do you know that? If this were 10 years ago, your blood would already have been spilled all across the palace gate. You have never witnessed her demonic temper before she fell into that coma. Countless young nobles were beaten half to death or crippled by her. The person seated high above was none other than Shao Ying, the current Empress Dowager Shao. Narrowing her eyes, she continued, "But you needn't worry too much. I had already secretly sent people to protect you." Shao Hui asked in confusion. "Then why did your Majesty want me to deliberately provoke her at the palace gate today?" Shao Ying replied darkly. "I wanted to know whether the dragon-patterned jade pendant left behind by the late emperor, the one that should have been passed to his Majesty, is in her hands." Back then, Changping was able to be so arrogant because the imperial guards and palace attendants all obeyed her orders. But now more than half the people in the palace have been replaced. If she wants to command the imperial guards, she can only rely on the dragon-patterned jade pendant. That is why I suspect the pendant is in Changping's possession. Xiao Ying continued her analysis. Today I had you humiliate her in front of the common people. If she truly had the dragon-patterned jade pendant in hand, then with that temperament of hers, I feared she would order the imperial guards to strike you down right there at the palace gate. Only then did Xiao Hui understand. She hurriedly tried to reassure her. Your Majesty needn't worry so much. The late emperor is gone. Everyone in the palace is ours now. Even if Princess Changping were to bring out the dragon-patterned jade pendant, so what? Could there still be anyone willing to obey her? Xiaoying lifted her teacup to drink and said pensively, I hope so. But I have long wondered, if it were truly useless, why would the late emperor still have given the dragon-patterned jade pendant to her for safekeeping? Back on Changping's side, she was now holding a gleaming jade pendant in her hand and saying calmly to Ji Xiang, Tell me, isn't that woman wicked to the core? She even wants to snatch away the one thing father left me as a keepsake. At this, Ji Xiang's eyes lit up with hope, and he gestured excitedly. So the late emperor's dragon-patterned jade pendant really can still command the palace guards? Changping immediately burst out laughing and denied it. Would I be lucky enough for something that useful to fall into my hands? If I could command the imperial guards, the first thing I'd do would be to shave Xiao Ying's head bald. At this, Ji Xiang's shoulders slumped in obvious disappointment. Just then, as Changping's carriage was moving along, it suddenly swerved sharply. Caught off guard, she only had time to cry out, Ah! Regaining her balance, anger flared up at once. Changping leaned out the window and shouted irritably, How dare someone crash into my carriage? Are you tired of living? I want to see exactly who it is. Before she could finish cursing, Yu Shunshun walked over, his expression cold and composed. The moment Changping saw who it was, all her anger vanished. Inside, she was already secretly rejoicing. Heavens, such a dashing beauty, peerless and magnificent. Shunshin stepped forward politely and asked, Is your highness all right? Keeping that same distant expression, Yu Shunshin explained in a cold tone, I was hurrying home to receive guests, so I had my servant take a shortcut. We were moving too quickly just now, and I did not expect to run into your highness's carriage. Seeing this, Changping immediately seized the chance. Clutching her chest, she put on a weak act. Not all right at all. Yu Lang, you hurt me just now when you crashed into me. If you don't believe me, take a look. Her bold words made Yu Shunshin flush red for an instant. Changping pressed her advantage at once. Leaning in close to him, she spoke in a teasing, seductive tone. Yu Lang, tell me, how should you compensate me? Or perhaps tonight you could come to the princess residence, and I. As she spoke, her voice grew lower and lower, full of suggestion. But suddenly Yu Shunshin ruthlessly flicked his sleeve away, turned, and left. Changping was left a little bewildered and dissatisfied. Turning back into the carriage, she puffed out her cheeks and asked Ji Xiang sulkily, Yu Lang doesn't care about me? He must be getting old and boring. Teasing young men was much more fun back when I was younger. Ji Xiang immediately nodded in agreement. Exactly. Then your highness should keep looking for younger handsome men. Changping kept rambling. It's a pity I was unconscious for so long. I wonder who the most handsome young man in the capital is now. She paid no attention at all to the fact that Yu Shunshin had returned and was standing right behind her, holding a food box in his hand. His face was so dark it was impossible to read, but the killing intent radiating from him made everyone nearby wonder inwardly, why does it suddenly feel freezing when the sun is still out? Yu Shunshin now held out a wooden box before Changping. His tone remained cold, but his gaze had softened somewhat as he said, I am not carrying anything valuable on me. Please accept this as compensation to your highness. She accepted the box in surprise and thought, Wan Fu Tower? She opened it. Inside was a still-hot braised pork knuckle nestled among green vegetables. Pointing at the food box, Ji Xiang gestured in confusion. Your highness, this is... Changping turned to look out the window, her voice turning gentle and faintly sorrowful. Little Ji Xiang, do you remember what date is today? Today is Mother Empress's birthday. I personally picked the flowers she loved most in the palace for her. At first, I had intended to order the braised pork knuckle from Wan Fu Tower that she liked best to celebrate her birthday. But Wan Fu Tower sells very few of them. They have to be ordered a day in advance. As she spoke, she looked toward Yu Xuanxin's retreating figure with a complicated expression. Ji Xiang then expressed his very practical thoughts in sign language. How could Lord Yu just happen to know Her Majesty the Empress's birthday and preferences? He definitely ordered it a day in advance to take home for his guests. He just threw it over here conveniently, so he could get away from you. Changping hugged the food box tightly, speaking in a stubborn, sulky tone. Were you waving your hand around for now? How would I understand any of that? Yulang put thought into buying this for me. By then, Yu Xuanxin had already reached the entrance of his residence. A man on horseback hurried up from behind, calling out with some urgency. Junyao, don't you usually move so slowly? Why are you in such a hurry today? I was on horseback and still almost couldn't catch up to you. This man was Jiang Yinqing. Panting, he continued, I forgot to remind you. Your residence is now on the same street as the princess residence. Did you happen to run into her on your way back? Yu Xuanxin turned to him and answered blandly, expression unchanged. You are overthinking things. How could we possibly run into each other that easily? Hearing that, Jiang Yinqing looked somewhat relieved and continued chattering away. Good if you didn't. I heard Princess Changping has all kinds of tricks. Who knows whether she might deliberately ram her carriage into yours on the road, then use it as an excuse to seduce you. That sort of lowly tactic is something the street ruffians in the capital often use to lure proper young ladies. Jiang Yinqing kept talking carelessly, completely failing to notice that Yu Xuanxin's expression had already turned furious and dark to the extreme. He turned to glare at his friend with murderous intent, as if he wanted to devour alive the man who was slandering the person in his heart. Only then did the man beside him notice the killing intent in Yu Xuanxin's eyes, and he started an alarm. What's wrong? Why are you looking at me like that? Inside, he was already panicking. Why does Junyao seem so terrifying today? At that point, the man could only awkwardly change the subject and advise. Why don't you move house? This small residence of yours is in the most expensive area in the entire capital. Even renting it can't be cheap. Why not buy a small place near mine instead? I really don't understand why you insist on living somewhere so expensive. Yu Xuanxin withdrew his gaze and replied indifferently, Thank you, but I have my own plans. Don't worry. When he returned home, Madame Rong saw that Yu Xuanxin was only just getting back and immediately tapped her chopsticks against the table in reproach. I told you this morning that you had to come back early today. Your third aunt came especially to see you, and yet here you are, only coming back this late. She has already gone home. Now that you're an official, have you become full of yourself? Yu Xuanxin hurriedly bowed his head respectfully and admitted his fault. Your son would not dare. But today something truly important came up, which is why I was delayed. Another day, I will certainly go in person to apologize to third aunt. Only then did Madame Rong calm down a little and say, Good that you know. Back then, if your third aunt's family had not helped us, then the two of us, alone and powerless as we were, would never have been able to settle down in Yu family village. Don't forget this kindness. Yu Xuanxin sat down at the table and softly answered, Yes. Then he asked, Why did third aunt come by today? Madame Rong lightly tapped her son on the head with her chopsticks and said in a stern voice, Who else would it be for, if not you? She went on excitedly. Your third aunt said that Magistrate Chun of Tongfang County went to the village to find a matchmaker. She remembered that you're also at the age to marry, so she personally helped you look into Magistrate Chen's granddaughter. Your third aunt said that young lady of the Chun family is outstanding in character, talent, and looks. After hearing this, Yu Xuanxin narrowed his eyes and asked, Tongfang County? Magistrate Chen's granddaughter. Seeing his attitude, Madame Rong put down her chopsticks and gave a light snort. Raising her voice, she said, What? Now that you're a high-ranking official, you think her family status is too low? Then do you also look down on your own mother? Compared with a magistrate's granddaughter, my father was just a poor licentiate, and I'm nothing more than a woman cast off by her husband. The moment he heard his mother say this, Yu Xuanxin immediately dropped to his knees and said respectfully, but firmly, Your son absolutely does not mean that. Not long ago, this Magistrate Chun sent people to the capital to try to approach me. Magistrate Chun has a bad reputation, and in the last two evaluations of officials, his performance was rated merely average. Next year is another year of official evaluation. If he is rated average or below again, at best he will be demoted, at worst, dismissed from office. So, As he spoke, he hesitated slightly. A moment later, Yu Shunshin continued, "If mother truly likes that young lady, then it can still be done. I have some acquaintance with the official in charge of the Ministry of Personnel. I could speak to him and ask him to take care of this magistrate Shun." Hearing her son lay out the full story so clearly, Madame Rong could only sigh. "I'm not so muddle-headed that I'd use my son for something so absurd. Get up. Who are you kneeling for?" As she ladled him a bowl of soup, she continued, "Forget this matter. But I've already asked people to help inquire after suitable young ladies for you. Let's see how many more excuses you'll have to refuse me." Yu Shunshin took a sip of soup and replied cheerfully, just to placate her, "Yes, yes." But Madame Rong suddenly continued in a firm tone, "Don't think you can fool me again with that nonsense about some hidden illness. Old imperial physician Zhang has assured me several times already that there is nothing wrong with your body at all. I even found some tonic medicine for you. Drink this soup, and I guarantee that issue of yours will be cured at once. It absolutely won't affect your marrying a wife and having children later." Hearing this, Yu Shunshin choked and sprayed out the mouthful of soup he had just been drinking. His face flushed bright red with embarrassment and helplessness. At the princess residence, a servant was meanwhile presenting Changping with all kinds of exquisite jewelry. At the sight of them, she said happily, "Grandmother really loves me best to send me so many things." Standing beside her, Mama Hua smiled and said, "Mama Hua also has your best interests at heart. Knowing your highness is clever, she sent this person over as well." A young maid stepped forward and respectfully said, "This servant, Hua Mian, greets your highness." The moment Chengping heard the maid speak, she clicked her tongue while gesturing to Ji Xiang. "You can talk? That's troublesome. I don't like girls with tongues." Hua Mian was instantly terrified out of her wits. She dropped to her knees at once and kowtowed, pleading, "Your highness, spare my life." But Chingping immediately changed her tone and said cheerfully, "Fine. For grandmother's sake, go find yourself an empty courtyard and stay there a few days. When you've learned how to regard yourself as mute, then you may come serve me. After all, once a tongue is cut out, it doesn't grow back." Trembling, Hua Mian respectfully withdrew, her heart still pounding with fear. "Thank you, your highness, for your mercy." Once the girl was gone, Chongping picked up a plate of pastries. In a nostalgic tone, she said, "There's even this good thing. Grandmother really was thoughtful. After all these years, she still remembers that I like silver thread cakes." Her eyes suddenly turned cold as she murmured, "Too bad this isn't meant for people to eat." With that, she threw the plate of pastries into the lake, her face utterly devoid of regret. Ji Xiang then gestured, "Your highness, go in first. I'll go to the study and bring that person over." Then she stood up and adjusted her clothes. "I'll go myself." At that moment, Chengping had already changed into a brilliant red robe, bright as flame. She walked into her bedchamber and lightly triggered a hidden mechanism behind the wall. At once, another hidden space opened before her eyes. Chingping gently picked up an old portrait. Nostalgia surged up endlessly within her as she thought, "Mother Empress, Father Emperor, Juner has come to see you." Right then, Chengping personally set out a lavish table of food. Her hands moved swiftly as she arranged the dishes, and she turned happily to say to Ji Xiang, "Today is Mother Empress's birthday." Juner prepared braised pork knuckle and osmanthus cakes from Wanfu Tower. They're all dishes Mother Empress and Father Emperor like. Mother Empress liked me best in red, so if I wore morning clothes, she would definitely be angry. That is why I dressed beautifully. Juner still remembers the rules. The first cup is a toast. With that, she picked up a cup of wine and respectfully raised it high. To peace under heaven. As soon as she finished speaking, she drained it in one gulp. Chengping then lifted a second cup and said with a smile, "The second cup, to wish Juner safety and good health." Next comes the third. The third cup, to wish Juner happiness always. She went on drinking cup after cup until the wine slowly took effect. By evening, Chengping had clearly drunk too much. Her face was flushed red, and she began to ramble. "Mother Empress, don't worry. Juner is living well. Even though you and Father Emperor are no longer in the palace, Grandmother is still alive, and she treats me very well. The little emperor who inherited the throne is still too young to bully me." "Oh, right." And the regent minister, who is also my lover, is completely smitten with me and can't escape. He bought today's pork knuckle to offer to Mother Empress. Standing to one side, Jixiang watched her and could not suppress his growing worry. The princess had dismissed all the servants and shut herself in here, drinking alone for a long time. If she kept drinking, he feared it would harm her health. Seeing that Chengping was so drunk she was nearly losing consciousness, Jixiang hurried forward to catch her slender body. "Your Highness!" Jixiang quickly brought a pill to her lips and said in a weak voice, "Your Highness, take the medicine." Chengping forced herself to reassure him. "It's fine. I probably drank a few extra cups, so the poison in my body is acting up. Once I take the medicine and endure it a little, it will pass quickly." Hearing that, Jixiang hurried off, not forgetting to turn back and say, "I'll go brew a bowl of sobering tea." Chengping's tone had by now turned dejected. Her eyes glistened as she looked at the portrait before her and complained softly, "Mother Empress, are you disappointed? You only wish for me to live a happy life, but I cannot become what you hoped for. Because my revenge, peace under heaven, safety and health, a lifetime of joy, yet the wish of your daughter Juner in this life is..." Beneath the quiet late-night sky, a figure suddenly appeared. Chengping laughed bitterly at herself and said, "Looks like I really am drunk. I'm even seeing things now." The figure before her gradually became clear in the candlelight. At the sight of it, Chengping's cheeks flushed faintly red, and she reached out her hand as she said softly, "You Shunshin." At once, Shunshin dropped to one knee, lifted Chengping's hand, and pressed a light kiss to it. In a gentle voice thick with feeling, he said, "Even if I must give up everything, I will still fulfill your wish in this lifetime, my one and only princess." Seeing how embarrassingly sentimental the man before her was, Chengping could not help but giggle. "No, you're not him. My Yu Lang is the most proper and upright of men. He would never say such things. But I do think you are very handsome, and you do resemble Yu Lang a little. Why don't you attend on me tonight?" As she spoke, she leaned in until her face was almost against his. Shunshin showed a trace of embarrassment and asked softly, "How does your Highness wish me to attend you?" Chengping immediately pushed him down and in a seductive, spellbinding tone said, "What? You don't know? Then shall I teach you?" Staring fixedly at the handsome man standing right before her, Chengping could not restrain herself from praising him. "You look so much like my Yulang. Look, even that dazed expression is exactly the same. This is the Yulang I like best." As soon as she finished speaking, she casually began to slowly remove Shunshin's outer robe. Seeing this, he hurriedly reached out and tightly caught her wrist, lowering his voice as he asked, "Your Highness, is this truly what you want? You once said that Yu Shunshin was of humble birth and unworthy of you." Old memories instantly surged into Shunshin's mind. Back then, Chengping had been seated amid piles of jewels and treasures, idly toying with one ornament after another, as she said with indifference, "I am also of an age to be married. The prince consort Father Emperor chose for me is quite suitable, well matched in family background and of equal standing. Compare with these things, what is love? In this deep, man-eating palace, those who have love only meet a miserable end. That is how it is. No matter how good Yu Lang may be, in the end his birth is lowly. He is not worthy of me. Even if we shared some romance, in the end we would still be strangers." When Shunshin heard those heartless words back then, a flash of sorrow rose unbidden in his heart. Returning to the present, Shunshin suppressed the hurt on his face and, keeping a grave expression, asked again, "Even now, do you still think that way?" At that moment, Chengping struggled to rise with what little strength she had left and tried to speak. But perhaps because the wine was too strong, she swayed for a moment, then collapsed helplessly into Shunshin's arms. Resting her head against his chest, Chengping spoke in a despondent voice tinged with a sob. "You don't understand. If my prince consort does not have a noble background, then how could he protect himself? What I want is not a companion, but an ally. I cannot follow in Father Emperor's footsteps." Once she had said that, she tiredly shut her eyes, though tears had long since rolled down her fair, moving face. After listening to every word of her confession, Shunshin replied softly, his voice full of deep understanding, "I know. That is why this time I will protect you for a lifetime of peace." A little while later, Jixiang arrived carrying a bowl of hangover soup. He saw that Chengping had already fallen fast asleep on the table, covered with a large warm blanket. Seeing the scene before him, Jixiang secretly found it strange and thought, did the princess even remember to bring out a blanket before sleeping? This really is ghostly. Early the next morning, in the solemn main hall, a childish but deliberately authoritative voice rang out. I do not approve. The little emperor sat high on the throne and continued in a loud voice. As for conferring the title of Grand Princess on Princess Qingping, I do not agree. In his heart, the boy puffed out his cheeks and thought angrily. I heard this imperial elder sister used to bully Mother Empress in the palace. I'm going to avenge Mother Empress. I refuse to confer a title on this hateful elder sister. The officials below immediately broke into animated whispers. Just then, a dignified man stepped out from the ranks and said in a resonant voice, Your Majesty's concerns are not without reason. The title of Grand Princess carries exalted status, almost like that of a feudal prince. It is indeed something that should be approached with caution. The one who had spoken was Songzua, director of the Secretariat, one of the 4 powerful regents. He turned toward Shunshin and, with hidden meaning, asked, What does Lord Yu think? As soon as the crowd heard his name, murmurs instantly spread through the hall. After all, no one in court was unaware of the rumors of an ambiguous affair between Lord Yu and Princess Qingping. Everyone was curious to know how Lord Yu would react. They thought, Princess Qingping is absurd and overbearing. She truly is unfit to serve as an example for the imperial clan. Making her grand princess is simply, in the entire court, Lord Yu is probably the one who least wished to see the princess gain power. Yet, contrary to expectations, Shunshin kept his face dark and composed, and said in a serious, respectful tone, According to the edict issued by the founding emperor in the first year of Khitan, Princess Qingping is the legitimate eldest princess born to the late empress. To confer the title of Grand Princess upon her follows precedent. For your majesty to oppose it now would be improper. Hearing that, the little emperor flushed with anger and shouted, Grand Tutor Yu. In his heart, the boy fumed. It's one thing that Grand Tutor Yu is always strict with me, and even in memorials he only ever puts me below him, but now he even wants to oppose me over this matter. From behind the hanging screen, Xiaoying lowered her voice and sternly reminded him, Your Majesty, mind your words. After speaking, Xiaoying turned and calmly said, Lord Yu means that the court bestows honors solely according to established rules. But if an evildoer abuses power and influence, would not the court be aiding that person? I believe that is not the original intent of a law. Hearing this, Shunshin replied coldly, Princess Qingping should be ennobled according to precedent. As for what crimes she may have committed, those can be handed over to the Ministry of Justice and the Court of Judicial Review for investigation and punishment according to the law. The assembled officials were astonished and inwardly praised him. Truly worthy of Lord Yu. First raise her to high rank, then question her crimes after. Not a single imperial edict or court law would be cast aside. Let her climb high first, then knock her down. Lord Yu's grudge against Princess Qingping really is no ordinary one. Exactly. Lord Yu is truly ruthless. High above them, Xiaoying softly murmured, Junior, then continued clearly, Grand Tutor Yu's words are reasonable. Then let it be done as Grand Tutor Yu suggests. The next day, Qingping had sobered up by now. Rubbing her forehead, she complained, My head hurts so much. Standing beside her, Jixiang quickly handed her a bowl of water and said, Who told your highness to drink so much wine last night? Luckily, even drunk, you still remembered to spread out a blanket. Otherwise, you would have caught a chill. Taking the bowl, Qingping replied cheerfully, I am naturally that meticulous. But last night, I seem to have had a very lovely dream. In the dream, a handsome young lord confessed his feelings to me. Seeing how unconcerned Qingping still looked, showing not the slightest worry for her own safety, Jixiang said a little irritably, Empress Dowager Xiao is about to throw you into prison to suffer, and your highness is still thinking about some young lord from a dream. That maid Hans Wang has already hurried over with the news she heard. So why aren't you anxious at all? Yet on hearing this, Qingping not only failed to panic, she even blushed a little as her mind drifted to scenes in the prison. She said shyly, In prison, I'd be wearing prisoner's clothes, shackled in chains, while Yu Lang would be in his court robes, holding a whip as he walked over. Just thinking about it makes it feel quite different. Hearing her say something so outrageous, Ji Xiang snapped in exasperation. Princess, seeing how flustered he was, Chengping finally soothed him. What's the hurry? Do I look that easy to bully? You really have no patience at all. Look, hasn't the person I wanted to wait for already arrived? Just as she finished speaking, a timid figure suddenly stepped inside. At once, a maid dropped to her knees and saluted. This servant, Lu Xiniang, greets the princess. May I ask why your highness summoned this servant? Inwardly, Xiniang was uneasy. I'm only a cleaning servant in the princess's residence. So why has the princess suddenly called for me? Resting one hand under her chin, Qingping fixed her with a sharp gaze and began. In the 30th year of Yonghe, a military transport officer from a merchant vessel returned drunk at night and was robbed and beheaded. The authorities investigated for over a month without finding any clues. Later, the murdered man's younger brother's wife accused her sister-in-law of teaming up with an adulterer to rob him. If I remember correctly, that sister-in-law who was accused of murdering her husband and stealing his property had the surname Liu. By the time Qingping said this, Xiniang's face had already gone stiff with shock. Qingping leisurely continued. In the end, the authorities did not convict her of murder. Hearing these things exposed, Xiniang began to tremble and said in a low voice, Princess, you... Qingping smiled meaningfully. Relax. Don't be nervous. I have no interest in pursuing something from more than 10 years ago. Killing someone is all. I've killed before too. It's not such a big matter. When ordering someone to do things, it's best to know the roots and branches clearly. As she spoke, she calmly wrote something down on paper, then handed the letter to Xiniang. Qingping went on, I think you act decisively and boldly, and you seem to have some freedom to move about. If you work for me, then you are my person. Deliver this letter to the place written on the envelope and hand it to the master there. Trembling, Xiniang accepted it and answered uneasily. Yes, this servant Lu Xiniang will do exactly as the princess commands. Once Xiniang's figure had disappeared, Ji Xiang finally asked curiously, that letter just now, the kind used by noble young ladies in the capital to write to the man they fancy. Princess, are you sending a letter to Lord Yu? Sitting before her dressing table and looking into the mirror, Qingping replied calmly, No, the one receiving the letter is the first beautiful young man I ever took a fancy to, even earlier than Yu Lang. Today I want to see him again, and I must give him a reunion gift. As she spoke, Qingping carefully arranged her hair. 3 days later, the decree conferring Princess Qingping the title of Grand Princess was issued, along with a formal accusation. It charged that 12 years earlier the princess had seized commoners' land, driven the victim to suicide, and also borrowed 100,000 taels of silver from the national treasury. It further alleged that she had raised the land and used treasury funds to build a luxurious estate there, where she kept countless handsome young men for pleasure, indulging in delight night after night. The censors all jointly impeached the princess and demanded an investigation. The Empress Dowager issued an order. The case of the princess seizing commoners' land was to be tried by the Court of Judicial Review. At this moment, Ji Xiang gently pushed the princess's wheelchair as they headed outside. Suddenly, an old mama approached from afar and respectfully called out, Princess. On seeing her, Qingping frowned and asked loudly, Mama, what exactly is going on? I heard that even the imperial guards are already on their way to arrest me. The mama leaned close to Qingping and whispered in a voice only the two of them could hear, This is clearly Xiao Ying deliberately trying to deal with you. I don't want to go to the Court of Judicial Review. Doesn't grandmother care about me? How could Her Majesty not care about the princess? But this case is too big. The uproar is so great that even the Grand Empress Dowager cannot suppress it. But Princess, rest assured, the Xiao family is not yet powerful enough to cover the sky with one hand. You need only go boldly. Qingping pouted and continued. But I heard this case also involves the matter of the 100,000 taels I supposedly owed the court back then. Of those 100,000 taels, I did not take a single coin. The second prince borrowed it in my name and lent it to Uncle Yang's family to make up a shortfall. Seeing that she was about to blurt everything out, the mama immediately raised a hand as if to stop her mouth. Worried, she said, "Princess, be careful with your words." Back then, the Yang family was persecuted so badly that they had to leave the capital and return to their ancestral home. Only later did Her Majesty manage to help Uncle Yang find a local post, and only then did he have the chance to rise again. It would be best if you did not dig up the events of that year, lest your uncle be implicated and stripped of office. Chengping puffed out her cheeks and said sulkily, "I know the Yang family has not had it easy. Back then, for grandmother and second imperial brother, I took on this disgraceful reputation. If this matter had not been dug up again, I would have carried it to my grave. But now that I've suffered such a huge injustice today, I have to make grandmother compensate me." Hearing that, the mama smiled and probed, "What does the princess want?" But inwardly she thought, "I have to soothe this little ancestor today. If she goes mad, there will be endless trouble." Chengping answered casually, "If grandmother could arrange an official post for Uncle Yang, then I also want a post for my beautiful young lord. Don't worry, my beautiful young lord passed the Jinshi exam and truly has talent and learning. It was only because he fell gravely ill for a time that his future was delayed until now." The mama fell silent and considered for a moment before replying, "Very well." Chengping said happily, "Thank you, mama." She smiled, but in her heart she had long since made plans of her own. At the imposing court of judicial review, a crowd of commoners surrounded the place and kept up a noisy discussion. Some spoke maliciously, some denounced the princess. Heaven truly has eyes. The princess has finally met her retribution. Evil meets evil in the end. The princess stands accused and still gets a proper seat. Bah! At this moment, Shunshin stepped forward and respectfully greeted her. "Princess." Chengping looked at him with tender eyes full of affection and said softly, "Why has my lord come to the court of judicial review?" Shunshin replied coldly, "This minister and vice censor-in-chief Lord do have come by imperial order to observe the trial." At that moment, Yu Guang slammed the striking block on the table with a sharp crack and declared loudly, "Bring the plaintiff into court." At his order, a careworn man entered and bowed deeply. This commoner, Xia Duoshou, greets all the honored lords. After paying his respects, the man lifted his head and began tearfully listing the charges. 12 years ago, the princess seized the Xia family estate. She forced our whole family out of the capital. My father, old and sickly, died on the road. To make a living, I had no choice but to work hauling cargo at the docks. As a result, I accidentally fell and was injured. After I was hurt, the old and young of my family had neither food nor clothing. In order to treat me, my wife first sold our daughter, then sold herself as well. In the end, I was separated from my wife and child, and my family was destroyed. Hearing such a tragic story, the people outside all showed righteous anger and began loudly condemning her. "That's too miserable, inhuman. Seizing someone's estate and treating human life like grass. Where's the justice in that?" Chengping, seated to one side, calmly objected, "I did not seize it. At the time, I gave the Xia family 12 taels of silver." But those words only made the crowd even angrier, like adding oil to the fire. 12 taels? How is that any different from robbery? That's bullying people far too much. Chengping added another sentence. After that, I gave the place away to a friend. At once, Shunshin questioned her. "May I ask the name of this friend to whom the princess gave the property? Where does he live? He is also connected to this case and must be brought before the court as well." Suddenly, from within the noisy crowd, a clear voice rang out. "There is no need for such trouble. I am here." A refined, scholarly-looking man stepped forward and introduced himself. "This humble scholar, Xia Daiyun, greets the honored lords. I am precisely the friend to whom Princess Chengping granted that estate." With that, he elegantly walked toward Chengping and greeted her. "Princess, it has been a long time. Seeing the two of them so close together, Shunshin's displeasure became obvious, his gaze turning as sharp and cold as a blade. Qingping, seeing Daiyun appear, smiled lightly and asked after him, "Little peony, have you been well these past years?" Daiyun answered gently, "Thanks to the princess's blessings." "Aye." Before he could finish, Shunshin appeared and cut him off. Witness Xia Daiyun, answer only questions relevant to the case. Seeing Shunshin step in, the crowd immediately cried out in unison, "Lord Yu is so upright." Inwardly they thought with some shame, "Just now we were only staring at that wicked princess. Truly disgraceful." Even Yu Guang beside him did not stint in his praise. "I never expected Lord Yu to be so proactive in this case. His whole heart is on the case alone." Daiyun took a scroll from his sleeve and began to present his statement solemnly. "Yes, I came today to lodge an accusation as well. Once your excellencies hear my accusation, you will know the full story." Meanwhile, the man called Xia Duoshou, still kneeling behind him after making his accusation, stared at Daiyun and wondered, "Why does this fellow look so familiar?" Holding the paper, Daiyun said in a ringing voice, "I, Xia Daiyun, accuse Xia Duoshou of plotting robbery and murder 12 years ago, murdering my father Xia Tsongshan, forcing my mother to death, all in order to seize the Xia family estate." The man kneeling on the ground was stunned when he heard this and cried out in terror, "You're Xia Tsongshan's son? Weren't you dead already?" 20 years ago, in my father's native village, his younger brother Xia Duoshou and his wife came seeking shelter. My parents were kind-hearted. Thinking that we sprang from the same roots, they took them in unconditionally. Who would have thought that after seeing our family's wealth, Xia Duoshou would grow greedy? He lured my father up the mountain and murdered him, then lied to my mother, saying father had been kidnapped by mountain bandits. He deceived her into signing a contract to sell the house in exchange for ransom money. My mother believed him and truly signed the deed, handing over all the money to him. She never imagined that our estate would become Xia Duoshou's residence. Afterward, Xia Duoshou forced my mother to remarry him. She refused and smashed her head against a pillar, dying on the spot. Hada, though, tied my mother's corpse and me together and threw us into the river. Then he announced to the outside world that after learning of my father's death, my mother had taken her son and jumped into the river to commit suicide. Once the surrounding crowd understood the twists and turns of the story, they erupted in anger and loudly condemned him. "What the hell is this? He's truly a beast with a human face." Seeing the tide of public opinion turning against him, Dado panicked and began shouting in self-defense, speaking complete nonsense. "He's one of the princess's people. He must have colluded with the princess to frame me." Qingping was sitting leisurely in her chair, a cunning, contemptuous smile on her lips, and said in a mocking tone, "If this princess wanted you dead, wouldn't it be easier than crushing an ant? Are you even worthy of making this princess rack her brains and conspire with others?" Both Yu Guang and the man beside him heard that and inwardly bristled, thinking, that actually makes sense. I can't even refute it. But Dado stubbornly continued to defend himself, craning his neck as he shouted, "Don't listen to just his side of the story. Who can prove that what you're saying is true?" Suddenly, a sharp voice rang out from the doorway. "I can." A hard-faced woman walked in and introduced herself in a forceful voice. "I am Trane Hoa, the servant Hada, though, sold off 12 years ago. This is the bill of sale from when Hada, though, sold me into a brothel. It still bears his signature and thumbprint." Seeing the woman he had thought dead long ago appear before his eyes, Dado trembled in fear and stammered, "Trane Hoa, you, why are you here?" The surrounding crowd saw that there was another living witness, and the wave of condemnation grew even fiercer. "There's a signature and thumbprint in black and white. Hada, though, you're not human. You even sold off your own servant, and you still have the nerve to claim he sold himself?" Ahoa knelt on the courtroom floor in agony, her voice trembling as she continued her accusation. "This common woman can testify. Back then, Ha Tong Tien was strangled to death by Hada, though. Afraid he wasn't fully dead, Hada, though, viciously stabbed him once in the chest as well, then buried the body in a lotus pond 3 miles from Ha residence. Pointing straight at Dado's face, Ahoa angrily exposed him. He embezzled the Ha family estate, and most of the silver he stole was offered up to his adoptive father. That adoptive father is a high official in the Ministry of Personnel. By currying favor with him, he could buy an official post. Seeing Ahoa continue to pour out his secrets, Dedo feared he would be completely exposed, so he lunged at her as if to silence her and shouted, "Shut up! Don't you want to live anymore? Maybe you don't want to live, but I still do." At that moment, the man seated beside Hugh Kwong saw that the situation was turning unfavorable and spoke up in a low voice to stop her. The most urgent matter today is to investigate the case of the princess forcibly purchasing farmland. As for whether the Ha family bribed officials to buy office, that can be examined in another case later. Inwardly, he was alarmed, thinking, this case is not. We cannot let Tran Ahoa keep talking. Only then did Chengping leisurely speak up in rebuttal. Is Hada, though, so afraid Madame Tran will reveal the identity of that adoptive father? It seems that adoptive father's background is even more impressive than the Dali temples. This princess is rather curious what kind of lofty figure he might be. Hada, though, gave most of the money taken from Ha Tong Tian's household to that adoptive father. Doesn't that mean the adoptive father is directly connected to this case as well? Just now, Lord Ngu said that anyone involved in the case must be brought before the court. Lord Ngu, I remember correctly, don't I? Shunshin heard this and calmly replied, Your Highness remembers correctly. That is indeed so. Chengping smiled in satisfaction, then turned away, not forgetting to add meaningfully, Naturally, I must remember Lord Ngu's words very carefully. Watching her proud figure as she turned away, Shunshin felt a little embarrassed, and a faint blush crossed his face. At that moment, Hugh Kwong slammed the table and ordered, Lord Ngu is right. Dragado out. How dare you be so unruly in court? Suddenly, Ahoa gathered all her courage and shouted out, that adoptive father is Assistant Director Li Takai of the Ministry of Personnel, Lord Li. Hearing that, Hugh Kwong was startled and repeated, Assistant Director Li Takai of the Ministry of Personnel? Inwardly, he began to worry. Although the rank of Assistant Director was not high, the Li clan had the Empress Dowager as a powerful backer. This was about to become very troublesome. The censor beside him immediately barked. Absurd. It seems to me this Madame Tran is clearly biting at random. Maybe the princess is trying to drag others into disaster. Let us adjourn the court for now and continue the interrogation tomorrow. Chengping immediately responded in a sharp voice. Watch your words. Censor do that estate never belonged to Hada though in the first place. Back then, the princess merely returned property to its rightful owner. How is that harming others? And now that there is a new lead, before investigating anything, you cut Madame Tran off and call it random slander. Censor do, you're this anxious. Could it be that you're trying to protect someone? The crowd outside found her argument perfectly reasonable and quickly joined in. Exactly. Back then, the princess didn't seize commoners' land by force. She was delivering justice. What kind of nonsense is this? Princess Chengping can be interrogated, so why can't that other man be interrogated? Chengping silently assessed the situation. Although Li Takai was only a 6th rank official, he came from the prestigious Li clan. Grand Censor Li Chongfu was his uncle. After a brief pause, she questioned, Censor Du, as a trusted subordinate of the Grand Censor, you're trying to avoid this case, aren't you? Hearing the question strike right at the heart of the matter, he grew slightly uneasy, but still forced himself to stay calm and answered, We censors handle our duties independently. Why would this official need to avoid anything? Hugh Kwong immediately ordered the soldiers, Men, go summon Assistant Director Li Takai of the Ministry of Personnel here. Jinla guards, go to the location Madame Tranukas Ed and recover Ha Tong Tian's remains. Yes, sir. Watching the soldiers depart, Chengping felt a trace of nostalgia. Those young men of the Jinla Guards didn't look bad at all. Suddenly, Shunshin stepped forward, blocking her line of sight, and called in a cool voice. Princess. Chengping looked up in slight confusion. Engi Ulang. Shunshin abruptly noticed that the hairpin in Chengping's hair had tilted a little, so he leaned close and gently reminded her, Your Highness's hairpin is a little crooked. Hearing that, Chengping merely raised a hand and touched it lightly, replying indifferently, Oh, is it? I put it on in a hurry before coming out. So Lord Ngu has seen me, make a fool of myself. This butterfly among peonies hairpin is a little heavy. If I wear it too long, it slips. Galang, help me see whether it's still crooked. The moment Shunshin heard the name of the hairpin, his expression darkened because it immediately reminded him of Hot Deep Yuan. Unable to hide his displeasure, Shunshin quickly said, "It isn't straight, and it doesn't suit your highness. Better change to another one." Seeing his attitude, Chengping smiled indulgently and replied cheerfully, "All right, I'll listen to Galang. I'll change it when I get back." A short while later, Li Takai appeared. From outside came a loud, respectful announcement. Assistant Director Li Takai of the Ministry of Personnel has arrived. An official entered and cupped his hands in salute. "Li greets all my lords." The man who had just arrived was indeed Assistant Director Li Takai. Hada, though, was kneeling on the ground at this point. Seeing someone familiar, he crawled over and pleaded repeatedly, "Adoptive father, save me, adoptive father." Li Takai showed him no mercy at all and kicked those straight away from him. Open disgust was written on his face as he shouted, "Where did this dog come from? This official doesn't know you." After cleanly severing their connection, Li Takai turned to report to Hu Kuang, "Lord Zeng, the responsibilities of our ministry are weighty. Li always performs his duties without regard for personal feelings and has offended quite a few people. If anyone who dislikes me can come to the Dali Temple at any time and falsely accuse Li, then doesn't that mean Lord Zeng also bears some dereliction of duty?" Hu Kuang still maintained a calm demeanor as he answered in a low voice, "If Lord Li is truly clean and upright, then even being accused is nothing to fear." Qingping, meanwhile, was sitting leisurely in one corner enjoying the spectacle. Seeing how arrogant the man's tone was, she spoke up with a sneer. "Lord Li certainly speaks boldly. Is this because you have the censorate at your back and think you can threaten others?" Only then did Ta Kai notice Qingping. He faltered for a moment before reluctantly greeting her. "So it is the princess. Li has been discourteous." Seeing how unwilling he looked, Qingping curled her lips and immediately mocked him. "If you don't want to pay your respects to this princess, then don't force yourself. After all, the Li family has such great power and influence. This princess wouldn't dare offend the censorate. The entire capital knows that the Dali Temple intended to question me today. What exactly are you city officials pretending for? Are you deaf?" Hearing her say that, the commoners outside all burst into laughter, and Takai's face turned black on the spot. Unable to endure the humiliation any longer, he turned and said tensely, "Since today is about the case involving the princess and the Ha family," Li asked himself, "What acquaintance do I have with the Ha family? May I leave now?" Ahoa, who had been kneeling in the back, suddenly cried out in anger, "You're lying. You are Hada, those adoptive father. Back then, what you accepted from Hada, though, wasn't only his silver. It was also because he knew massage techniques and could treat your neck pain. Hada, though, also said there's a large mole on your right shoulder blade." As soon as the crowd outside heard such detailed accusations from Ahoa, they all chimed in. "She even knows there's a mole on his shoulder. Then she definitely isn't making it up. Lord Li, take off your clothes and prove it." Hada, though, is even older than Lord Li, and yet he calls him adoptive father. Just as the atmosphere was growing tense, a loud shout from soldiers suddenly rang out from behind. "Make way, make way. The Empress Dowager has issued a decree." A group of soldiers carrying the imperial decree entered and began to announce, "It has been determined that Princess Qingping did not forcibly seize commoners' land. The Dali Temple is to conclude this case at once and immediately release the princess back to her residence." On hearing the proclamation, Takai looked as if he had struck gold and said smugly, "Did you hear that?" In contrast, the crowd outside was deeply dissatisfied with the announcement and began noisily protesting all at once. "What? The questioning isn't even finished yet. Why release her already?" Standing there observing everything, Shunshin silently analyzed the situation. This decree came too quickly. It couldn't be a coincidence. The Empress Dowager wants to shield the Li family. She must have already issued the order before Li Takai even came to court. Thinking it over, that made sense, didn't it? Right when Madame Tran exposed Li Takai and Hada, though, in public, everyone had been stirred up. Though she heard the announcement, Qingping showed no joy at all. She clapped her hands, propped her chin on one hand, and said, "Her Majesty the Empress Dowager's decree has come at a truly perfect moment. No wonder the Li family fears no one. But this princess does not wish for the case to be closed so perfunctorily. I am willing to remain in prison for a few more days, and I also hope the case can be thoroughly investigated so the wicked may be punished." The crowd seemed to agree with Qingping's words and began voicing their support. That's right. The princess is right. So the princess truly is the righteous one. Even the princess is willing to stay in prison. Then what excuse is there not to investigate further? Qingping, her gaze sharp, continued, "When the founding emperor established the Great Shang Code, he once said, 'The judgments of the authorities must follow the law. Otherwise, the law will be thrown into chaos and the realm will be endangered.' The Empress Dowager has ordered the Dali Temple to close the case hastily. Under what statute is that justified? Does she think the laws of our Great Shang are a joke?" Hearing those forceful words, Hu Kuang was puzzled. Since when could the princess casually quote the Great Shang Code like this? The censor standing beside him whispered, "Wasn't the princess supposed to be a useless straw bag who only knew how to collect handsome men?" Shunshin silently watched Qingping's steadfast figure, warmth rising in his heart as he thought, "In this world, perhaps no one but me knows that although the princess is playful on the surface, she is also deeply learned, and has never been lazy for a single day." Back then, old memories came flooding back, and he began to drift into recollection. In the past, Yu Shunshin had once coldly swept aside the plate of pastries Qingping brought him and said in an icy voice, "I don't need them. Your Highness need not waste your effort personally bringing food here. Please let me go." Seeing how firmly he rejected her, Qingping was not angry at all. Instead, she teased him with a smile. "What's wrong, Gulang? Are you still angry about last night? Even if this princess was a little abrupt last night, if you didn't want it, in the end this princess didn't force you, did I?" Hearing this, Shunshin could not help recalling that seductive scene, and the tips of his ears instantly turned red. Seeing that, Qingping pressed on, "You even pushed this princess away and ran. Am I really that frightening?" Shunshin's face was already a little flushed now as he said awkwardly, "Princess, please have some self-respect. It is said that if sentient beings in the six realms had no desire, they would not follow the cycle of birth and death. One should regard desire as one would a venomous snake or a thief." Qingping listened and still replied casually, "You like the Shurangama Sutra? This princess doesn't care for that." She gave a soft laugh, then continued, "Compared to that, I prefer. Before one's eyes are mountains and rivers sinking in dusk, flowers falling in wind, and rain wound the spring still more. Better to cherish the person before you." Hearing this, Shunshin felt suspicion arise in his heart. The Shurangama Sutra was a text of the Heavenly Gate sect. How could a princess recite it so fluently? Qingping suddenly moved closer, pressing herself near him. Her breath brushed lightly against him as she teased, "Speaking of books, could it be that in Gulang's eyes, this princess is worth less than those lifeless books? If I told you my residence contains many rare books not found outside, would you be willing to stay?" Embarrassed, he turned his face away to hide his agitation, his cheeks flushing red as he replied, "Princess, please stop teasing this humble one. Everyone in the world says Princess Qingping was born overbearing and has not a scrap of literary talent in her head. How could there possibly be rare books in your residence?" Before he had even finished speaking, Qingping quickly stuffed a pastry into his mouth to cut him off. Giggling, she continued, "Whether it's true or not, Ngulang can see with your own eyes and know immediately. If I'm lying, then count it as this princess owing you an apology. And this is the deposit. As for the rest of the compensation, Ngulang can collect it slowly later." As soon as she finished speaking, she bent down and lightly licked away the pastry crumbs at the corner of Shunshin's lips. The bold act made his whole face burn red. Returning to the tense reality of the courtroom, the censor ground out his rebuttal. As the princess herself just said, official judgments must place weight on evidence. According to the law, Ha Tong Tian's body is still missing, so the charge of murder and robbery against Hada, though cannot yet be established, nor nor has the princess fully cleared herself of suspicion. Better to suspend the hearing for now and wait until the victim's body is found before making any further determination. Qingping did not waver in the slightest and swiftly answered, "Very well. Trouble yourselves to prepare a clean prison cell for this princess. I will remain at the Dali Temple in obedience to the law. Today, I am determined to keep my eyes open and see exactly who dares insult and trample upon the laws of Great Shang." Seeing this, Hu Kuang immediately declared, "Then the court is adjourned for now. Soldiers, escort the Tho away at once." The furious crowd seized the chance to pelt him with stones while hurling abuse. "Damn vulture! Damn cur! Godi!" Amid the chaos, a stray stone suddenly came whistling toward Qingping. Shunshin reacted with extreme speed and rushed forward to shield her, saying anxiously in a low voice, "Princess, be careful." Qingping glanced over and saw that the back of Shunshin's hand had swollen red from taking the blow for her. Her heart tightened in pain, and she hurriedly asked, "Ngalang, your hand. Are you hurt anywhere else? Let this princess see." Shunshin was slightly embarrassed by her excessive concern, and only after a moment did he gently reassure her, "It's nothing, only a superficial injury. Your Highness need not worry." Suddenly, Qingping called sternly, "Ngalang." Seeing that determined expression, Shunshin could only stare blankly for a moment, before lowering his head in obedience. "I understand. I will do as the princess says. What does your Highness want me to do?" As soon as he finished speaking, he leaned close to Qingping's ear and whispered, "I will do exactly that." In another quiet space, Qingping was leisurely toying with a fresh flower. Mama Hua stepped forward and respectfully reported, "Princess, the physician has arrived and is already treating Lord Ngu's injury. Fortunately, it is not too serious. Your Highness may rest assured." Qingping let out a relieved breath and replied, "That's good. If anything happened to Ngulang, this princess would die of heartbreak." Mama Hua hesitated for a moment before asking directly, "Were the matters concerning Ha Deep Yuan and Madame Tran all arranged behind the scenes by the princess? Was it you who used the situation against itself today and made Hada, though, expose himself in court?" Hearing this, Qingping curled her lips into a faint smile and feigned innocence as she said, "What nonsense is Mama talking about? This princess lay unconscious for 10 whole years, where I've gotten the ability to deploy people like a general. Himno immortal. I suppose that over these past years, Ha Deep Yuan has been secretly keeping watch on Hada, though, and Li Ta Kai. Knowing that the surnamed Ha intended to accuse this princess, and seeing the moment was ripe, she simply went with the current and stepped forward to avenge her family." Hearing that perfunctory answer, Mama Hua reproached herself inwardly. "Perhaps I am overthinking it. If the princess truly were so shrewd and resourceful, how could she have willingly disguised herself as a useless person in the eyes of the world? Back then, because the late emperor pitied the princess for losing her mother at a young age, he took her with him wherever he went. She heard much of court affairs, so none of it was unfamiliar to her. It was only a pity that her temperament was overbearing. Though she had a little cleverness from beginning to end, she still had not been able to accomplish anything great." Drawing her thoughts to a close, Mama Hua continued with her advice, "No matter what, the current situation is advantageous for us. In order to preserve the reputation she has worked so hard to build, the Empress Dowager will most likely let Li Ta Kai go. We can take this opportunity to place a few of our own eyes and ears inside the Ministry of Personnel." After hearing her out, Princess Qingping only replied indifferently, "Is that so? But to me, that seems far too foolish." She drew back her usual teasing manner, her gaze turning deep and unreadable as she began to analyze things. The Ministry of Personnel is the nerve center of the 6 ministries. All officials below the 6th rank in the Great Shang Court must pass through it to be selected, and it is divided among the power bases of the 4 great clans. If we risk planting our own people there, we will only alert those 4 families. Rather than fixating on the Ministry of Personnel, which all 4 houses are watching closely, we would do better to focus on dealing with the censorate, which is currently monopolized by the Li family. Mama Hua bent down to pick up the flower petal that Changping had carelessly dropped. Shaking her head, she said softly, "That won't be possible. The four great clans have always stood together, especially the Shao and Li families, who are on the closest terms. They would never let us move against the Li family so easily." Princess Changping crushed the flower in her palm and said in a low voice, "Mama, don't forget, the one firmly seated on the throne is the Shao family's grandson. The Li family may bear the name of being the head of the four great clans, but ever since the little emperor ascended the throne, the Shao family's power has soared. How could the Shao family willingly remain second to anyone else? And do the other three families not fear that once the Shao family fully monopolizes imperial authority, it will turn on them next? So the best move for you, Mama, is to seize this chance and incite the other three families to oppose Li Chongfu's exclusive control over the censorate. After all these years, they must have had their fill of the Li family's arrogance. They'll surely be more than happy to add fuel to the flames." Hearing such sharp analysis, Mama Hua immediately lowered her head respectfully. "Your Highness is truly far-sighted. This old servant cannot compare." At that moment, however, Princess Changping clasped her hands together, changed her manner, and turned to Mama Hua in a coaxing tone. "I know grandmother doesn't have many capable people around her. A matter this important needs someone truly competent to take the lead. What do you think of Yulang? Or should I go seduce him? Oh no, persuade him? I think Yulang still hasn't forgotten our old feelings. If Mama is willing to help me." Hearing this, Mama Hua sighed. A trace of contempt flickered across her face as she thought, "A leopard cannot change its spots. She is still the princess whose head is full of nothing but handsome men. I truly should not expect too much of her." But outwardly, she remained calm and said, "Leave this matter to this old servant. I will arrange someone more suitable. There is still much to attend to in the palace, so this old servant will take her leave first." As soon as Mama Hua disappeared behind the door, the innocent expression that had been on Changping's face darkened in an instant, filled with killing intent. Coldly, she said, "Little Jixiang, tell me, this flower is truly an eyesore, isn't it?" With that, she dropped the crumpled flower from her hand onto the ground and ruthlessly crushed it beneath her foot. Standing beside her, Jixiang smiled and gestured, "Why should your Highness dirty your feet? Sooner or later, those four clans will vanish from this world. It will only take a little more time." Just then, a steady voice came from outside. "Princess." Yu Shunshin stepped in, his face cold and expressionless. The moment Princess Changping saw him, she happily ran forward to greet him. "Yulang, is that you? Coming quickly. Has your hand gotten any better? But why does the wound look even worse than before? Didn't the physician already treat it?" Jixiang carefully examined Yu Shunshin's injury and immediately signed a warning to Changping. "This wound obviously wasn't caused by those stones from earlier. Lord, you must have deliberately done something just now to end up in such a miserable state. Princess, don't let yourself be fooled by a self-inflicted injury." Yu Shunshin lowered his eyes and put on a pitiful look. "The physician already treated it. It's only that on my way here, I carelessly bumped into the edge of a table. By bad luck, I struck the old wound." Hearing that, Princess Changping immediately turned and scolded Jixiang. "Why are you slandering Yulang? Who in this world would be crazy enough to deliberately injure himself? He was already hurt by accident, and that's pitiful enough. Hurry and bring over that jar of ointment you made before." Jixiang reluctantly brought the medicine box over, his face full of provocation as he gestured. Lord Yu's other hand is still perfectly healthy. Why not let him apply it himself? Why keep pretending? Don't think I don't know that you understand sign language. Even when exposed like that, Yu Shunshin still wore an innocent, blank expression as if he knew nothing. Seeing the tension in the room, Princess Changping snatched the medicine box away and waved Jixiang off. "You're always fussing so wildly. How could Yulang possibly understand any of that? I want to apply the medicine to Yulang myself. Go outside. Oh, and while you're at it, go check whether Little Peony needs anything. He's an important witness. Staying at the Dali Temple may not be very comfortable." Jixiang, subtly dismissed, pouted and left in a huff. Now only the two of them remain. Yu Shunshin sat down across from her and asked thoughtfully, "It seems that the princess likes Xia dying quite a lot." As she carefully opened the medicine box, Princess Changping answered breezily, "That's right. Little Peony is both beautiful and talented. Don't tell me Yu Lang doesn't like him." Upon hearing that, Yu Shunshin leaned closer to her. His eyes burned as he asked in a low voice, "May I ask what kind of liking the princess has for Xia dying? Is it ordinary fondness, or is it like the way you once liked me?" Hearing the sour, vinegar-laced question, Princess Changping laughed softly, shook her head, and replied calmly, "Of course it's not the same." Yu Shunshin still would not let it go. The corner of his lips curved slightly as he pressed. "How is it not the same?" Princess Changping's gaze drifted afar as she began to recount the past. "The first time I met little Peony, he was just a filthy little beggar in rags. Other people snatched his food away, and he could only stare helplessly, not even knowing how to resist. At the time, I thought to myself that this fellow really was useless. But the second time I saw him, when someone tried to steal a tattered old book from his arms, that useless little wretch suddenly seemed like a different person. He was beaten black and blue, yet refused to hand over the book no matter what. He even learned how to kick and bite people. That look on him was rather interesting." Hearing the tense part of the story, Yu Shunshin asked curiously, "So then the princess helped him?" Princess Changping shrugged and answered cheerfully, "Of course not. I just stood there and watched as everything he had was taken from him. He was injured too, flattened on the ground, and unable to crawl back up." Yu Shunshin shook his head inwardly. That really was the princess's style. Unable to curb his curiosity, he continued, "And after that, recalling that scene from years ago, Princess Changping went on. After that, I kicked him once to wake him up and asked why he was risking his life like that. He said he only wanted to study, so he could avenge his father's death and his mother's ruin. At the time, I thought this little scrap of trash really had some nerve to dream so boldly." Her voice lowered, and a trace of pity flickered through her eyes as she continued. "Even ordinary families find it hard enough to support one person's schooling. Yet a beggar boy who could barely feed or clothe himself still dared to dream of it. But that day happened to be my imperial mother's birthday. I did not want to see someone die and bring ill luck, so I took him to the charity hall. Wasn't it only reading books? Then let him read. I wanted to see whether he could truly avenge himself." After hearing the story, Yu Shunshin hastily said, "The princess was truly kind-hearted. For someone in his circumstances then, that was the most suitable path for him." As she carefully spread medicine over his wound, Princess Changping said gently, "I like talking to Yu Lang. Only Yu Lang, no matter what I say, always manages to think of the bright side. Even when praising others, you sound sincere and pleasant." Yu Shunshin suddenly changed his tone and asked coldly, "So 12 years ago, the princess only helped him recover his estate, but did not move against Xia Duoshou and his people?" Princess Changping did not notice the shift in him and answered as casually as ever. "A blood debt for murdering his father and ruining his mother naturally had to be repaid by his own hand. Why should I help him with that? But he truly was gifted when it came to studying. Other people needed more than a month to memorize a book, but he only needed 10 days. Yu Shunshin, unwilling to lose, immediately cut in, "I only need 3 days." Hearing the childish grievance in his tone, Princess Changping leaned closer and praised him. "That's true. Yu Lang is still the most impressive of all." Those words made Yu Shunshin blush faintly. Seeing that shy expression, Princess Changping thought to herself, "So adorable. I really want to pinch his cheeks." Suppressing her laughter, she continued, "Still, I never expected little Peony to be so gifted in studying. His looks aren't bad either. The first time I saw him, his face was all bruised and swollen, so I couldn't tell what he really looked like. Who would have thought that after he recovered?" Yu Shunshin, hearing her praise someone else again and again, hurriedly reminded her, "Princess, you've strayed from the point. You've finished talking about Xia dying. Next, continue talking about me." Princess Changping blinked in confusion and asked, "My past with Yu Lang?" "Yu Lang knows it himself, so what is there to say? Besides, those things happened many years ago." Yu Shunshin's gaze dimmed. "If the princess does not remember, then let it be. I was presumptuous today." With that, he made as if to rise and leave. Seeing this, Princess Changping quickly reached out to pull him back. "Wait a moment. The sudden movement made Yu Shunshin lose his balance, and he fell straight into Princess Chengping's arms. Their faces were now so close that their noses touched. In that intimate distance, Princess Chengping spoke softly. "Yu Lang is so clever. You should know that the more important something is, the harder it is to say aloud. After I woke up, hearing news of Yu Lang made me very happy. Back then, I already knew it. Yu Lang would surely be able to shatter the world's scorn and climb to a high position. And you achieved it a full 10 years earlier than I expected." Yu Shunshin stared deeply into her eyes and asked hesitantly, "Have I not disappointed the princess?" Princess Chengping smiled and answered firmly, "Of course not. From the past until now, Yu Lang has always been the very best version I could imagine." Though he had received such sincere praise, deep inside Yu Shunshin still could not rid himself of self-reproach. Lowering his head, he said softly, "But I feel deeply ashamed. I fear that after waking and seeing this chaotic world, the princess must despise all that she sees and hears." Hearing such self-deprecating words, Princess Chengping comforted him gently. "Silly Yu Lang, you should understand that some great matters cannot be accomplished overnight simply because one wishes it, nor can one person alone turn heaven and earth upside down. Besides, what is it that I cherish and love most in this world? Does Yu Lang truly not know it in his heart?" Under that earnest gaze, Yu Shunshin hesitated and answered cautiously, Princess Chengping did not let him finish. She lightly placed a finger against his lips to stop him, then smiled and continued, "From the distant past until now, my feelings have never changed. My Yu Lang is still exactly the same as before, always so shy and bashful. It truly makes one cherish you. It makes me unable to restrain myself." Feeling Princess Chengping's hand stroking and roaming over him, Yu Shunshin flushed scarlet, his heart pounding and his legs weakening. He hurriedly said, "Princess, please stop teasing me. I am only an ordinary man of flesh and blood. I am absolutely not some iron-hearted gentleman of perfect restraint, as the princess thinks." Hearing this, Princess Chengping not only failed to stop, but answered decisively, "I care even less whether Yu Lang is a gentleman or not." Those words, laden with invitation, struck straight into Yu Shunshin's already chaotic heart like an arrow of love. Knowing he was on the verge of losing his composure, Yu Shunshin hurriedly helped Princess Chengping to her feet and, forcing his tone to remain serious, said, "In any case, I will take today's impropriety as a momentary whim of teasing on the princess's part. I would not dare act recklessly. I ask leave to depart first." Princess Chengping leaned wearily against the table as she watched him leave in haste, thinking to herself, "At least I succeeded in forcing Yu Lang to go." But the moment that thought ended, a violent wave of dizziness struck her. Heaven and earth spun around, and she suddenly collapsed to the floor. In her dazed haze, her heart kept urging, "Medicine! Little Jixiang, where are you? Why haven't you come back yet?" Meanwhile, Yu Shunshin was striding down the road. Recalling the alluring scene from moments ago, he blushed and scolded himself. "Yu Shunshin, you truly are depraved. Fortunately, at the last moment you managed to restrain your desire and did not do anything disrespectful to the princess." Yet he soon realized something was wrong. Still, today the princess was far more forward than usual. His steps abruptly halted as the oddity struck him. No, though the princess's temperament is overbearing and free-spirited, in truth, she is a person with great self-restraint. Ever since waking, aside from when she is drunk, she has always kept herself in check, observing propriety and maintaining distance. A bad premonition surged through him. He turned around at once and sprinted back toward Princess Chengping's residence. Inwardly, he cried out in panic, "Princess!" Yu Shunshin burst into her room in alarm. The sight of her lying motionless on the floor nearly stopped his heart. He rushed forward, lifted her up, and called out loudly, "Princess! Princess! What happened to you? Wake up!" Princess Chengping lay weakly in his strong arms, her brows drawn together in pain as she let out a faint cry. "It hurts." Yu Shunshin clenched his teeth and asked with a face full of worry, "If you go on like this, you'll bite yourself bloody." He then brought 2 fingers to her mouth to check, but in her dazed state, she suddenly bit down. He did not react, only silently endured it while soothing her. Just wait a moment. I'll fetch a physician for you at once. The instant he finished speaking, knocking sounded from outside the door. A hand reached in and pushed him aside. Startled, Yu Shunshin looked back. Ji Xiang had somehow arrived and already taken Princess Chengping from him, feeding her a pill. The moment she swallowed it, her complexion visibly eased. Only then did Ji Xiang lower his voice and gently remind him, "There is no need for Lord Yu to trouble himself. I am enough for the princess. I still need to perform acupuncture on her, so I ask Lord Yu to return for now." Yu Shunshin looked at him directly and asked bluntly, "What exactly is wrong with the princess? Why has no imperial physician been summoned to treat her?" He added, "Before, when I stayed at the princess's residence, I never heard that the princess had any illness." As if afraid Princess Changping might hear, Ji Xiang kept his voice low as he explained, "Lord Yu, you are a clever man. The princess has been very careful all these years to hide it and not let others discover it. If you truly wish her well, then you should pretend not to know. If the princess had wanted to tell you, just now she would not have endured the pain like that." Each sentence left Yu Shunshin frozen in place. In the end, Ji Xiang concluded with one final line. "The princess does not wish to speak of it, and I have no right to say anything to you in her stead." By then he understood enough. Yu Shunshin immediately stood up. "I understand. I was the one who overstepped." With solemn formality, he cupped his hands. "Then I leave the princess in your care." With that, he lowered his head in farewell. He then left just like that, leaving Ji Xiang behind with her. But Ji Xiang did not feel at ease either. He silently reminded himself, "There is no need for you to say it. She's my princess." Yu Shunshin continued walking out into the crowded streets. From somewhere, Dain came running over to him delightedly. "Junyu, so you're here. I've been looking all over for you." But with his simple, honest heart, he froze in surprise the moment he saw Yu Shunshin's face. It was the exact look of a man nursing heartbreak. "What's wrong with you? You look like you've just been abandoned." Then he reconsidered. "No, that can't be right. You don't even have a woman. Where would you find a chance to be abandoned? Your heart is full of state affairs. You've never had any interest in women, let alone someone in your heart." Yu Shunshin had silently watched the man opposite him carry on his one-man monologue. At last, he dropped a shocking sentence. "Of course I have someone in my heart." Dain could hardly believe what he had just heard, as if he had suddenly gone deaf at exactly that moment. "What?" Yu Shunshin said nothing more and kept walking, but the other man trailed after him like a curious little tail, determined to get an answer. "You're not lying to me, are you? If you really do have someone in your heart, then why haven't you married yet? With your current status and position, what reason could that young lady possibly have to refuse you?" Yu Shunshin looked at him and replied, "There is one." The wind blew past, leaving his heart just as hollow. She once said that marriage is an alliance between two families. She would marry a man worthy of her, and I am not worthy of her. Dain stood there in thought, watching his figure recede into the distance. If he put it that way, then that woman's background must surely be extremely noble. No matter how high Yu Shunshin's status had risen now, the more Dain thought about it, the more distant it all seemed. After all, he was still born of a lesser clan. It was not so easy to overturn the contempt and exclusion that the great families held toward lesser-born lines. Suddenly, Dain jerked in shock, as if he had discovered something earth-shattering. But wait, a woman that even Yu Shunshin could not approach. The clues were becoming clearer and clearer. Hold on, the woman in Junyo's heart couldn't really be, just like the rumors say, Empress Dowager Xiao, could it? The scene shifted to the site of the shocking incident. Following Chun Ahua's directions, the Jinla guards found Xia Songshan's remains. Once the corpse was found, the evidence was ironclad. Xia Duosho could no longer deny it and was sentenced to execution after autumn. The next day, the Empress Dowager issued a decree ordering a thorough investigation into Li Zicai. Sure enough, a search of the Li residence turned up a great many gold, silver, and jewels of dubious origin. Li Zicai was convicted and thrown into prison. When one man is miserable, someone else is naturally pleased. Princess Chengping, meanwhile, was proven innocent. Back then, not only had she not seized commoner's land, she had even saved the young master of the Xia family and helped him recover his inheritance. Rumor now had it that she was the great Shang dynasty's princess who hated evil most fiercely. A few days later, a roadside tea house. The common people gathered and buzzed excitedly over the Empress Dowager's decision. The Empress Dowager has spoken. She absolutely won't shield anyone from the Li family. This Li vice director is probably about to lose his head. But I heard the Grand Empress Dowager went to threaten Empress Dowager Xiao, saying that if she kept allowing the Li family to exploit the people, she would kneel before the late emperor's spirit tablet. That was when Empress Dowager Xiao changed the decree. Everyone else only got a light warning. Quit spouting nonsense. A middle-aged man slapped the table and declared with absolute certainty to the crowd around him, "Listen to me, all of you." Another man chimed in eagerly, "Our Empress Dowager is upright and just. Of course, she would never protect the Li family. Look at the Li family instead. They've always been used to bullying the common people. Even a collateral branch son of the Li family dared to openly take bribes. He's worse than a pig or a dog." The crowd shouted in furious agreement and contempt. That's right, the Li family is worse than pigs and dogs. A nearby voice rang out, as if quietly observing all. "Fourth Lady Lu has done a good job." Princess Chengping leaned back against the long bench, smiling faintly in satisfaction as she listened to the report. She took a sip of tea, calculation clear in her eyes as she saw her plan taking shape. In just a few short days, Xiao Ying's good name had spread throughout the capital. She signaled for her maid to bring over the reward. "This is for you." Fourth Lady was stunned when she saw the paper Princess Chengping handed her. "This is..." Only then did Chengping explain, "This is a recommendation letter for Wanyan Academy. Don't you have a nephew? Give it to him." Fourth Lady's eyes filled with tears. Her hand trembled as it touched the sheet of paper, and she cried out, "Wanyan Academy." To explain briefly, Wanyan Academy was one of the best academies in the capital, as famous as Mingda Academy. Every year, half of those who passed the Jinshu examinations came from these two academies. Minister Yu of the Central Secretariat had himself once studied at Wanyan Academy. Mingda Academy only recruited the descendants of great aristocratic clans. Although Wanyan Academy also admitted students of humbler lineage, they still needed a teacher's recommendation letter. Anyone without talent could never enter that academy. Fourth Lady immediately dropped to her knees and kowtowed in gratitude. "This servant thanks Your Highness the Princess. Your Highness's grace is as vast as heaven and sea. Even if I had to climb mountains of blades and plunge into seas of fire, I would obey the princess." After Fourth Lady left, Jixiang looked at Princess Chengping with puzzled eyes and asked softly about the cost of such an exchange. Your Highness only had 2 recommendation letters to begin with. This was the last one. Once it's used, there are no more. Was it really worth using it to win over an old servant? Chengping propped up her chin, pouted, and sighed. That old academy head really is stingy. Just tell me, if he were willing to give me 18 recommendation letters, would I still worry about not having anyone to use them on? Standing beside her, Jixiang attentively poured her tea and replied, "Empress Dowager Xiao probably never dreamed that Your Highness would find people to spread praise of her." Chengping's eyes flashed sharply as she analyzed the growing cracks between the two great families. The more the Xiao family is praised, the more the Li family will be dragged down. The Xiao family gains the advantage and still preens over it, while the Li family loses both men and face. She turned to Jixiang with a meaningful smile. "Tell me, do you think the Li family will still support the Empress Dowager with all their hearts?" She only asked for effect. She already had a plan. Her face was full of scheming delight. "Before long, the 4 great families will be like a pot of boiling water. They'll explode." Jixiang immediately played along with her. "Brilliant." Suddenly, her expression changed, and her breathing became labored. Jixiang asked anxiously, "Princess, hurry and take your medicine. Otherwise, the poison will flare up again, like last time." She took it and drained it in one gulp. Her face grew even paler as a thought crossed her mind. This poison struck whenever it pleased. Last time it had even flared up right in front of Yushanshin. He was so perceptive. Who knew how much he had already noticed? Jixiang, worried, brought the matter up again and asked, "Your Highness doesn't intend to explain anything to Lord Yu?" The question seemed to stir something in her. After that day, Lord Yu had sent someone with a letter, but the princess had only replied with a single sentence. I'm fine. Don't worry. Then she reassured Ji Xiang. There's no need. Yu Shunshin has always understood people well. If I don't say anything, he won't press me. But then she still hesitated. There are some things it would be better if he never knew. In the luxurious palace, Xiaoying did not even bother to turn back to look at the man kneeling on the ground. Why must you torment yourself like this? The man kneeling there wore a helpless expression. He was her third granduncle, Vice Director Li Xiangfu. Then she turned around and coldly informed him. As soon as I received your message earlier, I immediately issued an order for the Court of Judicial Review to sentence him quickly. But who could have guessed that before my decree even arrived, someone else had already produced ironclad evidence? Li Zicai is base and useless. In truth, he is unworthy of the reputation the Li family has preserved for generations. The old man lowered his head in shame. This old minister is ashamed. Though Li Zicai is incompetent, but the words that followed concealed a startling truth about blood ties. Li Zicai is this old man's illegitimate son. By reckoning, your highness should even call him cousin-uncle. Her eyes widened in shock at the confession. What? Li Xiangfu began recounting his shameful past. When I was young, a maidservant schemed against me, and that is how Zicai was born. My wife disliked the child, so I gave him to relatives in a branch family. As he spoke, he wiped his tears. My eldest son died young, leaving behind only one grandson, Hengqing. Half my body is already in the grave now, and only this one son, Zicai, remains. I beg your highness for mercy. Xiaoying could no longer suppress her anger at the deceit of the Li family head all these years. Absurd. Third granduncle. All these years you and your wife have seemed deeply devoted. Back then you even swore never to take a concubine, and the whole capital praised you for it. And now, Li Xiangfu raised his head and looked her straight in the eye. His plea now carried an unmistakable threat of power. Your Highness, ever since His Majesty ascended the throne, this old man has known that I am advanced in years. The time has come for me to step down. I, too, wish to resign my post, return home, and enjoy the happiness of children and grandchildren around me. But if I no longer even have descendants left, how can this old minister retire in peace? After he left, Xiaoying gritted her teeth in fury as she realized the old fox's true intention. Very good, Li Xiangfu. Shameless. He's threatening me. He wants to enjoy his descendants around him before he returns power to His Majesty. Tired, she gave the order to transfer the case, so as to avoid direct trouble for herself. Forget it. Let the censorate handle this case. The old man lowered his head. Many thanks for your highness's great favor. Having achieved his purpose, he departed calmly. Xiaoying summoned a trusted subordinate, a sinister light flashing in her eyes. Send someone to pass a few words to Li Xiangfu's wife. She fixed this grudge firmly in her heart. Her husband did such a disgraceful thing. As his wife, she naturally cannot possibly have known nothing. Elsewhere, a carriage rolled down the long road. Li Xiangfu asked the man beside him, "Are you certain the people spreading unfavorable rumors about the Li family during this time are all the Empress Dowager's people?" His confidant replied, "That's hard to say. There are too many of them, out on the streets, in the alleys, everywhere. But some of them are indeed retainers of the Shao family. Even if they want to praise the Empress Dowager, there's no need to trample all over the Li family's face like this." Li Xiangfu fell silent, digesting those words. Then perhaps it isn't the Shao family either. Maybe someone else is stirring trouble from within. He instructed, "Go investigate. Don't let us fall into someone else's trap." Elsewhere, as a game of chess was underway, a doubtful voice asked, "Princess, will Li Xiangfu really fall for it?" She smiled in triumph, because she knew very well the weaknesses of those who held power in their hands. If he were that easy to deceive, he would never have become the head of the Li family. As she spoke, she set down a chess piece. But as long as suspicion rises in his heart, the Li and Shao families will start probing each other. What a pity Li Xiangfu has forgotten this. Empress Dowager Shao is no longer the Shao Ing he could arrange it will back then. She continued, "Just wait. Xiaoying will not save Li Xiangfu's son so easily." Elsewhere, there was only dim lamplight and the sound of orders. "Bring him out." The moment Zicai saw Li Xiangfu's figure, He rushed forward and clung to him like a drowning man grasping at driftwood. Third uncle, you've finally come to save me. Guang looked at the Li father and son with mocking eyes. Lord Li's luck truly is excellent. I only wonder whether he'll still be this lucky next time. Li Xiangfu patted his chest proudly. With my Li family here, of course his good fortune can continue forever. There's no need for Lord Zhang to trouble himself. Whether he remains fortunate or not depends on my word. But at those words, both men suddenly stiffened as if they had sensed something. Li Xiangfu turned around in shock, all color draining from his face when he saw his wife. Madam, why are you here? Shen Jilan strode forward with murderous force. If I hadn't come, who knows how much longer you would have deceived me? Thinking back to the past, in the founding era of the Shang dynasty, Grand Marshal Shan Wanjun had commanded the armies of the realm and pacified war across the four seas. People called him the pillar of the nation. The descendants of his Shun family were a distinguished house of the former court. Those gifted in letters brought peace to the world. Those gifted in arms mounted horses and went to battle. And Shun Wanjun's granddaughter was. Shun Jilan stormed up to Li Xiangfu and slapped him several times, regardless of his desperate attempts to explain. Madam, listen to my explanation, she struck him again and said, before coming here, I had everything investigated clearly. I've already had that wench taken away as well. Wonderful. You dared to have a grown son behind my back. She beat Li Xiangfu until he nearly fainted. Then she turned to the official beside her and said, I have troubled you, minister. I have already explained the reason to the Empress Dowager, and Her Highness has granted permission. This case will still be tried by the Court of Judicial Review. My Li family's century-old reputation cannot be ruined by a bastard. The official, frightened out of his wits, quickly replied, This is within my duty. Madam truly understands reason. She was so furious that as she stared at her husband, she recalled the vows of the past that had now vanished like smoke and punished him on the spot. Back then you swore that in this life you would marry only me, and only then did I agree to wed you. Who would have thought I trusted the wrong man in the end? Just wait and see how I deal with you. By now he could not hear a single word clearly and only kept crying out, Madam, it hurts. Zicai stood frozen, watching the head of his household get dragged away when their reunion had lasted less than 10 minutes. Third uncle, Guang, standing to the side and enjoying the spectacle, finally said, Enough staring. Wash yourself clean. The next day, the newspapers were full of sensational headlines. Sitting in her carriage, Chengping read through the entire farce. This is even more dramatic than I expected. She gave a cold laugh when she saw that Li Xiangfu's attempt to save his son had turned to dust under his wife's hand. I told you, Li Xiangfu trying to save that bastard son from Xiao Ying's hands was nothing but wishful thinking. Her laughter was so unsettling that even the coachman felt afraid. The princess is truly terrifying. Suddenly, an unfamiliar voice rushed out and blocked her carriage. Your Highness the Princess, please stop. The driver shouted angrily. What wild brat crawled out from nowhere? You dare block the princess's carriage? Are you tired of living? The young man copied the neighborhood women and flopped onto the ground in exaggerated protest. This humble student is Nanding. I have long admired the princess and wish to recommend myself. Her attendants looked at him with suspicion and froze in place. Recommend yourself for cultivation? Behind him, a group of servants came chasing after him, shouting, Where do you think you're running off to, you brat? Seeing that he was in real danger this time, he threw caution to the wind and rushed forward. This humble student can play the zither and sing. I can also compose poetry and prose. I beg the princess to consider me. A hand seized him and the servants threatened him. You still dare run? Our county princess, taking a fancy to you, is the fortune of 8 lifetimes. Don't refuse a blessing you don't know how to appreciate. Nanning struggled wildly. I'd rather die than go. Your county princess is insane. She's already tortured so many people, and now she's driving people mad too. From inside the carriage came a voice dripping with mockery. So, your county princess Ningxiang has fallen so low that she's snatching men off the street now? And the men still refuse to go with her. The county princess's servants were not about to back down. They glared and snapped back. Who dares insult our county princess? Are you tired of living? As soon as the words left his mouth, the man received a slap. Chengping smiled faintly, lifted the curtain, and stepped down from the carriage. Her imposing presence silenced the crowd at once as she countered coolly, "I'm still not scolding her enough." The servant recognized her and immediately changed his tone. "So is Princess Chengping. Forgive our offense. But isn't our county princess merely following the princess's example?" Back then, when the princess snatched men right off the street, who in the entire capital didn't know about it? Chengping remained calm at his words. "Back then, when I took men off the street, every one of them happily came with me. How is that anything like your county princess, who turns flirtation into coercion through power?" The servant looked annoyed and pressed her further. "Then does the princess insist on snatching him from us?" Chengping stepped in front of Yin Nanding, her smile openly teasing. "Who said I wanted to snatch your man? I simply cannot stand seeing, in broad daylight in the capital of our great Shang dynasty, someone daring to forcibly seize a man." The other seemed to think she was the one bullying people too far, shamelessly so. She went on, "Therefore, Ji Xiang, already prepared at her side, took a deep breath. Chengping suddenly shouted, "Today, I will uphold justice on heaven's behalf. This hero will save the beauty." At a single whistle from Ji Xiang, the Jinla guard suddenly appeared and seized the troublemakers right there in the street. Street abduction, caught red-handed. The two men were dumbstruck. Yin Nanding stared at the imposing soldiers and blankly watched the group being taken away. They were the Jinla guard, men from Prince Huai's estate. Then he understood why they had appeared here. So the whistle in the princess's hand had simply been a signaling device. The princess knew this area fell under the Jinla Guard's jurisdiction. He marveled. The Jinla Guard are only government troops. Can they really be connected to a princely estate? Chengping folded her arms and watched the people being led away. She explained the reality of power in the capital with perfect calm. "Of course not. They'll be released almost immediately. But that isn't my concern, and begging me won't help." Her eyes swept around the scene. She looked distinctly dissatisfied with the appearance of the current Imperial Guards. They're soldiers of the court too, but why do they look so different? The Jinla Guard are an Imperial Guard unit and also the face of the great Shang dynasty. Only men with good looks are selected into their ranks. Why do the ones who came today look even older and uglier than the men I saw at the Court of Judicial Review before? Beside her, Yin Nanding gritted his teeth, shut his eyes, threw away his pride, and approached her. He did make an effort to pose dramatically, though not to much effect. "Is your highness dissatisfied with this humble student's appearance?" She stepped closer, lifted his chin, and examined him. "You." Then, without warning, she asked a bizarre question to test this young man's learning. "Do you know the Daofa Hui Yuan?" He stared blankly, not understanding the question at all. What Yuan? What Hui Yuan?" Seeing his confusion, she waved her hand and turned back toward her carriage. "So you don't know it? In that case, I can't take you back to my residence." And just like that, she climbed into the carriage and rode away, leaving him humiliated and bewildered. A brief note on the sheer enormity of the book Chengping used as her standard for selecting people. Only later did Yin Nanding learn that the Daofa Hui Yuan was a Taoist text consisting of 268 volumes, totaling 1.8 million characters. A few days later, she sat there sighing deeply, staring at the book in genuine thought. Yu Shunshin really did trick me back then. The bookmark tucked into the book was something Xiaoying gave him. She turned and said to the two people beside her, "Look, this is the most popular storybook circulating in the capital these past few days. And it says the same thing in here." Roughly speaking, it told the story of a sheltered young lady, deeply infatuated with her tutor. A noble young lady raised in the inner chambers falls in love at first sight with her teacher. Under the moon, they exchange poems together. The girl's heart begins to stir. Day after day, the young lady recites poetry with her teacher, and her springtime feelings bloom. To get close to the man in her heart, the noble lady comes up with every possible excuse, meeting him in the garden, bringing him snacks. and even deliberately borrowing books from the young tutor, secretly tucking into them a bookmark with her own name written on it, discreetly revealing her feelings. But unlike what she had hoped, the young tutor paid no heed to the noble lady's affection. After realizing her feelings, he took the initiative to leave his employer's household. In the final despair, when her love letter was never answered, the noble young lady, her heart burning like fire, wrote one last letter laying bare all the feelings in her heart, begging for pity from the man she loved. Sadly, after sending it out, there was no response at all, and the young tutor never returned. That noble young lady fell gravely ill and, in utter despair, obeyed her family's arrangements and married someone else. The townspeople whispered eagerly about the true identity of the characters in the wildly popular storybook, including her. Who in the whole capital doesn't know the legend of Qianglu? Cheongzhou then was none other than the current Empress Dowager, Xiao. A servant hinted quietly, since the princess dislikes Empress Dowager Xiao, this is the perfect chance for us to act. Mama Hua has just sent word that her side is fully prepared. We can move at any time. She pondered for a moment, then ordered a delay, waiting for a more perfect moment. What's the rush? When the time comes, I'll naturally tell her. Send word to Mama Hua that for now, she is not to act, lest she ruin the opportunity and turn success into failure. The servant replied, yes. At the side, Jixiang offered his own scheme, though he sounded somewhat unwilling to leave things as they were. Princess, are we really just going to keep that maid Huamian around like this? Should I think of a way to make her disappear for good? She can't be trusted. She smiled and reassured him. All right. I know you're more trustworthy than her, so stop wanting people to disappear every time something happens. Hearing that, he felt secretly pleased. I'm the person the princess trusts most, right? He kept pressing, asking where he stood in her heart compared with everyone else. Then I'm the second person the princess trusts most, right? She cannot be bothered to argue anymore. Fine, are you really going to compete with a dead person? At Zhaohua Palace, where Xiao Ying lived, Xiao Ying flew into a rage the moment she read the scroll and flung it away. How did that letter from back then end up in the Li family's hands? The maid at her side was long used to scenes like this. Whenever it involved Lord Yu, Her Highness would lose her temper. I'm desperate too, but what can I do? Trembling, she explained, back then, as Your Highness ordered, it was placed under the blanket. Logically, he should have seen it. Could it be? Xiao Ying cut her off decisively. Impossible. Even if he refused to accept it, he would only pretend not to have seen it and destroy the letter. He would never hand it to someone else. Her heart was in turmoil as well. Junyao, he could never betray me. She immediately gave an order. Go. Summon Gu Fengqi here. Gu Fengqi was Ying Dongjuan's former fiancé. A brief side scene. At the Jinla Guard camp, the soldiers were abuzz over a sudden transfer order from above. The jurisdiction of Squad 2 and Squad 4 is being changed? What does that mean? He gave the order sternly. The area near the princess residence will now fall under Squad 4. Recently, Chu Zheng has been dissatisfied. Squad 4 is too young and inexperienced. It would be better to let the battle-hardened Squad 2 take over. Everyone hearing this immediately understood. So that's what it is. Lord Yu is reminding us that the fiend Princess Changping has awakened. The commander nodded knowingly at Lord Yu's concern over the palace factions. The Grand Empress Dowager disliked her, and the princess residence was bound to become a source of endless trouble. Squad 4 was full of youngsters. They probably would not be able to handle it. The veteran Jinla guards all saluted Yu Yao in unison, showing their resolve for the new assignment. Please rest assured, Lord Yu. Starting today, we seasoned veterans of Squad 4 will take charge of the area around the princess residence. He nodded in satisfaction, but his final instruction carried a distinctly personal protective tone. Good. And from now on, do not let any young men get near the princess residence. She pouted at the plot in the book. That heartless Yu Ling again, getting tangled up with that woman Xiao Ying like this. Jixiang, standing nearby, eagerly chimed in. Exactly. Lord Yu is just too awful. Suddenly, a servant rushed in, panic written all over his face. Princess, this is bad. Men from the Flying Cavalry Guard have arrived. Qingping raised an eyebrow slightly, her gaze turning cold at the familiar name. The Flying Cavalry Guard? As she was thinking, a group of fully armed soldiers stormed in. At their head was a young general with a severe expression. We have come under orders to search for contraband. We ask for the princess's cooperation. She closed her book, the smile on her lips edged with mockery as she looked straight at an old acquaintance. I was wondering who it was. So it's the eldest son of the Gu family, General Gu of the illustrious Flying Cavalry Guard of Great Shang. Gu Fengqi gave the reason for the sudden search. Someone reported that this morning the princess sent people to a bookshop to buy 50 forbidden books. Is there such a matter? The maid at her side immediately spoke up indignantly in defense of her mistress. Nonsense. Our princess abides by the law. How could she possibly? She pointed to the book in her own hand and asked in return, You mean this copy of Tales of the Jade Tower? The guard looked at her helplessly. They were trying so hard to cover for her, and she ruined it all in one stroke. Gu Fengqi immediately took the book from her hand. Princess, this is a forbidden book. It may not be kept privately, nor passed on to others. Where are the rest? In just a few seconds, she put on a gentle, demure act while practically admitting everything. I thought this book was wonderfully written, so I bought one copy for everyone in the residence. Every word pierced Zhou Yan's heart like a knife. Princess, please do not be dishonest. My face hurts on your behalf. She ordered, Zhou Yan, take them to collect the books. The slap to his dignity landed squarely on his face. He accepted the order with resignation. Yes. Once the soldiers had gone farther off, her voice lowered, heavy with implication. General Gu, now that you've finished the task assigned to you, let's have a private word. Frowning in displeasure, he looked at her. Miss Gu has long forgotten the past. There is nothing private left for Miss Gu and the princess to discuss. Besides, the engagement of those years was nothing more than a casual remark by the late emperor. She laughed mockingly. Bringing up his current fiancée as a barb, she said, General Gu, do not flatter yourself. I have no interest in rekindling old feelings with you. Xiao Hui is plump and adorable, and she suits you very well. I cannot aspire so high. She abruptly changed the subject to a material debt dating back to when her father was still alive. I only wish to ask this. Back when father bestowed me in marriage to General Gu, he personally gave you a chest of betrothal gifts. Since General Gu has now made a match with someone else, shouldn't you return them? The maids beside her added with disdainful looks. Who would have thought General Gu was that kind of person? So wealthy, yet still greedy enough to keep someone else's betrothal gifts. Another chimed in. Or maybe he just can't forget his old love for the princess, so he refuses to give them back. Hearing this, he was furious and snapped back. The late emperor gave one box, yes, but it was not a betrothal gift. It was an imperial reward. She did not care in the least what it was called and cut him off at once. If you don't want to call it a betrothal gift, then fine, it isn't one. Call it whatever you like. The point is, shouldn't you return it to me? The two maids beside her pricked up their ears, eager for the gossip. It's only a few worldly possessions. If the princess wants them back, then give them to her and spare yourself other people's wagging tongues. He wanted to end this entanglement as quickly as possible to avoid further scandal. Fine. I'll go back and look for it. I'll have it delivered to the princess later. He spoke boldly enough, but when he walked out the door, he looked utterly drained, as if all the strength had been sucked from his body. After he left, Jixiang stepped forward and curiously asked what she was really after. Princess, you went to all this trouble to summon General Gu here, just for this? She opened the chest of betrothal gifts she had just received. Jixiang looked at the items inside and asked in surprise. These were the gifts the late emperor awarded General Gu back then. She examined each item one by one. Every piece carried a deep meaning left behind by her late father. These were all father's hopes for my future consort. The 4 treasures of the study meant he wished for him to excel in letters. The saber meant he hoped he would have the ability to protect his wife. The Buddhist scriptures and Guanyin statue were to bless him with a life free of illness and disaster. The jade pendant was a blessing that my consort and I would enjoy lasting marital harmony. She closed the lid of the chest, determination returning to her eyes as she prepared for a larger plan. It is a pity that in the end, father did not get what he wished. Then she turned to give Huamian an order. An important move had begun. Huamian, come here. Go with Mama Hua. The time has come. And the next day, at last, it arrived. In the throne hall, everyone stood in solemn rows. A censor stepped forward and presented a memorial in great indignation over the rumors harming the Empress Dowager's prestige. Your Majesty, Your Highness the Empress Dowager, at present a popular storybook, Tales of the Jade Tower, is spreading everywhere among the common people. All of it revolves around the matter of the Empress Dowager's fief from years ago, causing the imperial family to lose face and damaging the dignity of the court. He then made a bold proposal. In this subject's opinion, the Empress Dowager lacks womanly virtue and should immediately issue a self-condemnation edict to rectify public sentiment. Li Shuangfu was very pleased to hear that. The Empress Dowager had refused to listen. It was time she learn a lesson. Yu Shunshin, on the other hand, frowned at this crowd. When she heard it, she shouted an order to the guards. Men, drag this man outside. He was hauled away in utter bewilderment. He had thought he was being a hero, but this took a very strange turn. The other officials hurriedly spoke up to dissuade her, reminding her of the dynasty's laws protecting remonstrating officials. Censor Chun is a remonstrating official. Since the founding of Great Shang, no remonstrating official has ever been convicted for what he said, Your Highness. The opposite side was equally unyielding and barked back. Just because Great Shang has never had such a precedent, you think that gives you the right to be so arrogant? If the Empress Dowager acts this autocratically, the government will descend into chaos. The ones causing chaos are your censorate. Your censorate belongs to the Li faction, snakes and rats in the same nest, making trouble and stirring up demons. Seeing the situation turning chaotic, she glared down at them. She challenged anyone who still dared plead for that censor. Anyone who pleads for him is someone who also thinks AI Jia lacks womanly virtue and ought to issue a self-condemnation edict. Calmly observing the verbal brawl, someone finally spoke and shattered the tense atmosphere. It seems not everyone at court is a brainless fool. To demand that the reigning Empress Dowager issue a self-condemnation edict based only on a few rumors circulating among the people is simply ridiculous. Another official seized the opportunity to accuse Li Shuangfu of his crimes. Your Highness, this subject is not a censor, but today I must risk everything to denounce Censor-in-Chief Li Shuangfu. For his own selfish desires, Li Shuangfu has monopolized authority over the censorate. He has personally manipulated the tongues of the realm, slandered the virtuous, and framed loyal officials. As he spoke, he pointed straight at him. He suppresses dissent and acts on personal whim. Only now did Xiaoing really notice this man. Which faction does he belong to? Where did he even come from? But no matter. Every sentence he speaks echoes what is in my heart. In truth, her mind was not on this matter at all. Xiaoing turned and asked the opinion of the man she had always trusted and harbored special feelings for. Lord Yu, what do you think? Stubbornly, he thought to himself, I think nothing at all. But outwardly, he still had to maintain a proper demeanor. The founding emperor once said, within the censorate, there is no chief superior. He continued, if an impeachment requires the superior's permission, then if the superior himself is at fault, before the censor impeaches him, must he first ask Censor-in-Chief Li for approval? Censors are the eyes and ears of the wise ruler, not the eyes and ears of the Censor-in-Chief. The surrounding officials whispered in astonishment at his boldness in confronting the Li faction head-on. He really went straight for the heart. Lord Yu truly dares to speak. He only stopped short of pointing at Li Shuangfu and cursing him for usurping sovereign power. Shuangfu nearly burst into tears and wailed, You people are bullying me too much. Xiaoing gazed at his figure, her heart stirring warmly. She told herself, Just as I thought, he still cannot let go of me. At her side, the director of the secretariat suddenly felt the urge to speak and added, Lord Yu speaks reasonably. According to our dynasty's old system, censors never needed the approval of the censor-in-chief to impeach. The rules of the censorate should indeed be revised. Hearing this, Xiaoying seemed satisfied and sat back down. Very well then. She immediately gave the order. From this day forth, censors may directly impeach court officials. The censor-in-chief is not to interfere. The officials answered yes. After court adjourned, a questioning voice sounded within Xiaoying's palace. Have you found out yet? The maid before her reported. The man who impeached Li Shuangfu today usually has no connections with any factions. This servant has not yet found any clues. Nian Yu then produced a small slip of paper and recounted a strange incident involving the Grand Empress Dowager's attendants. But just now, someone threw this note to me and told me to remind Your Highness that the man is from the same hometown as Mama Hua, who serves at the Grand Empress Dowager's side. Xiaoying frowned. A note. She opened it and froze. This handwriting. Xiaoying was visibly moved. A familiar fragrance rose to her nose, making her heart tremble faintly. The paper carried the scent of Hengwu incense. This scent, it was one I had specially blended for that person to rub onto his book tags. The image of that man surfaced in her mind. He still remembers. Nian Yu stepped closer and explained further. This servant tested Lord Yu several times, trying to get him to help Your Highness, but each time Lord Yu ignored me. I thought he truly was that heartless. I never expected him to secretly remind Your Highness after all. Xiaoying thought back, her heart brimming with tolerance and understanding for the difficulties faced by the man she loved. At court today, it was fortunate he spoke up for me. It cannot have been easy for him to reach his current position. If he becomes too deeply entangled with the great clans, he will lose the trust of the lesser gentry. In the future, you need not test him anymore. As long as he can help in secret as he did today, that is enough. She ordered the evidence destroyed while laying out a plan to use the Li family against another faction. Take it away and burn it. The official who impeached the Li family today is one of the Grand Empress Dowager's people. Leak that to the Li family and let the Li family and the Grand Empress Dowager fight each other. Nian Yu admired her calculations. Your Highness is wise. If Lord Li deals with the Grand Empress Dowager, he will stop troubling Lord Yu. Elsewhere, at the princess residence, Princess Changping was sniffing the scent drifting through the air. She immediately pinched her nose in disgust. How vulgar. What kind of taste does Xiaoying even have? Throw this Hengwu incense away at once. Jixiang answered obediently and went to do it. But before leaving, he secretly laughed to himself, remembering how cleverly she had used Yu Shunshin himself as bait to lure the Empress Dowager into her trap. The princess had me prepare Hengwu incense, then used Lord Yu to scheme against the Empress Dowager. If Lord Yu finds out, will he be angry? She replied, the one who should be angry is me. Before this, that Mr. Yu deceived me and said that book belonged to Jiang Yanqing. She cannot even be bothered to dwell on it. Right now, she was carefully calculating how to protect his road to promotion. Besides, by doing this, I can both stop the Empress Dowager from obstructing him at every turn and help him divert Li Shuangfu's hatred elsewhere. In all the world, who else plans every step for his sake the way I do? Jixiang nodded in admiration. The princess is absolutely right. She glanced out the window, thought for a moment, and then ordered, go prepare the carriage. We're going to inspect the betrothal gift we reclaimed from Gufengqi outside Huangwu City before a dilapidated old house. Jixiang looked baffled that she would care about a place like this. This residence is in ruins. It was abandoned long ago. Why would the princess want to come back here? A place like this is worth asking Gufengqi for. She curled her lip disdainfully, then explained, what do you know? This is no ordinary ruined house. This is blessed land. Suddenly footsteps approached, and someone called out, the princess has arrived. Diane stepped out and bowed respectfully. This student pays respects to the princess. She nodded and got straight to the point about the position she had arranged for him. Well, have you gone where you were assigned? He reported Mama Hua's displeasure that he had not chosen the most lucrative department. Yes, NAMA-MANGAI originally wanted to place me in the Ministry of Revenue, but in accordance with the princess's instructions, I went instead to Chongwen Hall and took the post of ninth-rank proofreader. NAMA-MANGAI was very unhappy and said I did not know what was good for me. Hearing that, she chuckled. The Ministry of Revenue is the purse of our great Shang dynasty. If you choose not to go, then fine. But you insist on going to Chongwen Hall, which offers no future at all. Isn't that the very definition of not knowing what is good for you? Dai-yun looked at her with complete loyalty and affirmed his unconditional obedience. I do not seek to please anyone else. Wherever the princess tells me to go, that is where I will go. Smiling at the ruined house, she assigned him a task. All right, spare me the extra words. I called you here today because I want you to think of a way to renovate this abandoned residence. He answered. This student would never refuse an order from the princess. Suddenly, an odd noise sounded. A shrill voice from behind instantly made the air tense as a woman charged forward to attack. Dong-jun. With one move, she knocked Dai-yun to the ground. Qingping remained calm as she watched the scene before her, her cold eyes fixed on the newcomer with contempt. So it's you, Ning-xiang. She was the commandery princess of Ningyang, the only legitimate daughter of the heir of Prince Huai's household. She looked at Qingping arrogantly. We haven't seen each other in years. Seeing you fallen this low now makes me wake up laughing even in my dreams. Qingping showed no fear, only looked straight at her. Ning-xiang, 10 years ago, I tried to teach you how to be human, and you refused to listen. You insisted on becoming a ghost, and now you can't even manage that. You only want to be an animal. The woman glared at her and brought up the blood debt from a decade ago. 10 years ago, you crippled one of my legs. I have always remembered that. Even though you're crippled now, too, it wasn't by my hand, so it doesn't count. She flung Nanning directly in front of them. I may not be able to touch you, but no one at your side will live in peace. She shrieked on by herself. Doesn't this brat desperately want to become your man? Then let him suffer in your place. From now on, every man around you, I'll break his arms and legs. She turned to Dai-yun and made a disgusting offer meant to humiliate Qingping. Xia Dai-yun, if I couldn't take your life today, you won't be this lucky next time. If you abandoning Dong-jun and become a servant beneath this commandery princess's skirts instead, I'll spare you. Well, what do you say? He did not waver in the slightest. Rising to his feet, he shot back with a proud declaration. There is no what do I say. I was born a human being. I will never be of the same kind as an animal. Ning-xiang's face turned purple with rage. She threw down one last threat, then left with her followers in furious humiliation. Good. Very good. You chose this road yourself. Don't regret it. With that, she spurred her horse and galloped away. Ji-xiang, enraged, was about to act. She grabbed his hand and stopped his impulsive move. That was a provocation. There is definitely an ambush at the end of the road. If you chase after her, she will have a reason to kill you. She's smarter now. She knows that if she wants to deal with me, she must first remove the people around me. First, check whether their injuries are serious. Though Ji-xiang was unwilling, he had no choice but to obey. Yes, he went to examine Tingnan. There were many wounds, large and small. Though none were life-threatening, his right hand was ruined. The wrist bones had been shattered and could not be healed. She clenched her teeth, fury playing on her face at the sight of her subordinate so badly maimed. Let's go. Treat their injuries first. Return to Ningxiang. Sooner or later, I will make her repay this debt. The next day, when she returned to the princess residence, she sat by the fish pond, enjoying the moment. Look at them. These fish really are heartless. Her expression looked calm, but her words carried deeper meaning. Usually, whenever I feed them, they all come to the surface. But today, just because I smell a little fishy, not one of them will show itself. Could it be that I used to feed them too well? Standing beside her, Ji-xiang proposed a truly ruthless solution. He gestured that he could drug the fish. Yet the princess refused. With just one handful of this powder, not a single fish in this pond would escape. It was really no more than venting her anger on innocent targets. Since yesterday, the princess had been in a foul mood. Although Dai-yun had suffered only superficial injuries and was not seriously hurt, Tingnan, hearing that, she waved her hand, forbidding him from doing anything reckless. Go, go, go. Move aside. I have always won people over through virtue, and fishing is no exception. A familiar chuckle rang out, making her turn around in surprise. Yulang, why are you here? Yu Shun stepped forward and gave an official excuse to conceal his real concern. I heard Dayun was staying at the princess residence, so I came by. Then he added, Chowan Hall is revising a number of classical texts and urgently needs more hands. I came specifically to ask whether Lord he would be available to take up the post. Dayun was delighted and stepped out at once, answering with a strong sense of duty. Official business is important. I can assume the post at any time. Shunshin stared at the wound on his body, then asked after him, though his tone carried a trace of probing. I heard you were injured. Is it serious? Dayun was startled. Had word of yesterday's incident already spread throughout the capital? Even Lord Yu had heard about it. Shunshin gave a faint nod and repeated Ningxiang's threat against all the men around Qingping. I heard a little. Princess Ningxiang truly said it. Starting now, any man involved with the princess will lose one hand. Dayun was unnerved by the murderous intent behind those words. There have been rumors that the princess and Lord Yu are entangled in an unclear relationship. Is Lord Yu worried that he, too, may become Princess Ningxiang's target? He hurried to reassure him. Please rest easy, Lord Yu. The rumors about the princess and you are just baseless gossip. No one will take them seriously. Besides, your status is so exalted that even Princess Ningxiang would not dare lay a hand on you. Jixiang chimed in as well, deliberately emphasizing the words baseless gossip to tease him. Exactly, just baseless gossip, Lord Yu. You absolutely mustn't take it seriously. Finding it amusing too, she joined in, her eyes sparkling as she looked at him. Is that so? Yuling also thinks it's baseless gossip, right? He sighed. Princess, you really are used to teasing me. Noticing the empty basin, he conveniently changed the subject. Princess, are you no longer fishing? She answered a little sullenly, it's not that. The fish just refused to bite. He seized the chance to step behind her and murmur into her ear, suggesting a more interesting spot. If that's the case, let me take the princess somewhere else to try. Jixiang found the scene unbearable to watch and immediately stepped in to interfere. He gestured, there's no need to trouble Lord Yu. I can push the princess over there myself. Did they think he was gentle and easy to bully? Shunshin was determined not to let go this time. Please move aside. But Jixiang refused and kept slapping at Shunshin's hand until he let go. Seeing this, she frowned as well. Little Jixiang, at once he looked wronged and pitiful, as innocent as could be. Only then did she explain things to him. Ever since I was ambushed 10 years ago, he's always blamed himself. Since then, he hasn't dared let anyone else get close to me. He isn't deliberately targeting you, Yulang. He looked at her, his voice softening with sincerity and forbearance. Princess, in this lifetime, you never need to apologize to me for anyone else. In the end, they still went fishing. He handed her the fishing rod. All right, the two stopped before another small pond. He pointed into the distance, while she kept looking only at him. Princess, the fish are over there. But instead of looking where he pointed, she kept gazing at his face and began recalling a memory from long ago. I know. I just suddenly remembered that there used to be a big fish in this pond. A very beautiful fish. I liked it very much. I had meant to keep it in the house and have it by my side every day. Her words turned layered with meaning, and he looked a little awkward. Who would have thought that fish didn't like staying by my side? It panicked and fled straight into the pond, getting soaked all over. In the end, I was the one who pulled it back up. She was talking about 10 years ago, when he had been trying to escape the control of the princess residence. What nonsense about there being countless rare books in the residence. It was obviously just the princess tricking him into staying. No matter what, he had to find a way out as quickly as possible. As he was running, he suddenly caught sight of a familiar figure in the distance and hurriedly found a place to hide. The princess? Why is she here at this hour? But she was standing before a lantern, tears streaming down her face. At the sight, he froze in surprise. Then he remembered something else and hurried off again. The important thing now was still escaping the princess residence. What does it matter to me what kind of state this princess is in? I don't care in the slightest. But heaven was not on his side. He slipped and fell straight into the water. Both he and she were stunned. Yulong. He kept crying out, help. Seeing that, she gritted her teeth to stop herself from cursing him. This idiot. With that, she leapt in, while he sank deeper and deeper, his desperate cries growing more hopeless. Save me. Someone save me. The moment he fell into the water, horrifying memories of his childhood, neglect, and abuse came flooding back and closed in around his mind. Am I really going to die in such a ridiculous way? Just like before, those children from his past kept driving him away. Go die, you bastard. Get out of our village. He gave up, feeling that he was still that frail, lonely child from years ago. No one is coming to save me. I'm still the same. I can't do anything. I can't do anything right. Pathetic and laughable. At the very height of his despair, a warm yet commanding voice rang out, calling his name like a lifeline. Yu Shunshin. In the end, she did manage to save him. Then came the interrogation. Yulang, where were you trying to go? How did you fall into the water? He remained silent, coughing violently. His whole body shook, whether from the cold water or from fear of this princess. He himself could not tell. The princess must know he had been waiting for a chance to escape. It was said that Princess Qingping was brutal and vicious. How would she punish him? Yet she showed no anger at all. As if she had guessed his thoughts, she merely said, go back. The night dew is heavy and you're soaked through. Be careful not to catch a chill. Even as she spoke, her own body trembled from the cold. Shunshin stared at her blankly, confusion plain on his youthful face. He could not understand. Clearly the princess knew. So why? Qingping laughed, bright and radiant, yet the smile never reached her eyes. She stepped closer and teased him in her familiar lazy tone. Why is Yu Lang making that expression? Don't tell me you were moved because I risked myself to save you, and now you want to devote yourself to repaying me? Shunshin hurriedly changed the subject, avoiding her gaze. Princess, it's so late. What are you still doing here? Her eyes suddenly dimmed, turning toward the far horizon, full of unspoken thoughts. Today is the birthday of someone very important to me. I came here to wish that person a long life. He wondered what distance could keep her from being by that person's side. If this person is so important, why not meet them in person and wish them a happy birthday directly? She herself did not quite know how to answer, more or less because I can't see them. It was then that the young Yu Shunshin suddenly realized that the perfect shell she always wore was her way of facing a world full of danger. The princess, rumored to be overbearing and cruel, was still smiling right in front of him. From the moment they met, no matter when it was, whether rejected or humiliated, she was always smiling, saying things no one could tell were true or false, teasing everyone. That smile was like a mask she wore. There was clearly no warmth in it, nor was it carefree in the way he had imagined. She sighed, looking at the birthday meal that had long since gone cold with time. The braised pork and soybean paste was hard enough to get, and now it's gone cold. The sky lantern is broken too, so I can't release it anymore. Back in the present, he looked at the fish thrashing in the bucket and calmly asked Changping for her decision. Is that right? Does the princess want to take this fish back and keep it? She looked at the fish, then at him, her eyes carrying a light, quiet sense of letting go. This is not the one I used to keep. Better to let it go.